Chapter 1007. Jiao Weiner did not believe him. She struggled to get up. She did not know what Song Qingshu had done, but her body was weak. She tried a few times, but she could not get up. "Boss, let me go." Jiao Weiner blushed and tried to push the man away. Song Qingshu moved closer to her and whispered, "Weiner, did you miss me?" Jiao Weiner's face was red. She quickly said, "Boss, please behave yourself. Weiner, we have been husband and wife for a long time. How can you turn your back on me so quickly? I am so sad." Song Qingshu pretended to be sad. Hearing him bring up the past, Jiao Weiner's heart skipped a beat. However, her rationality prevailed. "Leader, you promised me that as long as I took care of things in Yangzhou, you wouldn't bother me anymore." Song Qingshu's fingertips slid across her white face. It made her eyelashes flutter. But things in Yangzhou are not over yet. Jiao Weiner was a married woman, so her body was very ripe. Now that she was being steamed by his hot breath, her bones felt like they were going to melt. But the rationality in her mind made her want to refuse. "I cannot do anything that would betray Brother Luo." The corners of Song Qingshu's mouth rose slightly. He knew that her line of defense had been loosened. "How have you wronged Senior Brother Luo? You should know that with his martial arts and ability, there are countless people in the entire Golden Snake camp who are better than him. In addition, he lost an arm. If it wasn't because of you, why would I give him so many chances? Looking at the whole world, it is most important for a man to make a career and bring honor to his family. Even if the ancestors of the Luo family knew about this, they would be grateful to you. Why would they think that you betrayed him?" Jiao Weiner felt there was something wrong with what he was saying, but she could not think of what it was. She did not know how to refute him. Song Qingshu struck while the iron was hot. "More importantly, everything you're doing now is for your husband. Could it be that you're still doing it for yourself?" "Of course not." Jiao Weiner blushed and quickly retorted. "That's it." Song Qingshu couldn't help but secretly admire his own wit. The matter was the same, but after this, he had successfully crowned the whole thing with a holy name. Looking back, it felt very different. Jiao Weiner's furrowed brows relaxed a little. "But this kind of thing," Song Qingshu simply interrupted. "No buts. Only you and I know about this. I'm not going to be your husband, so I don't think you're stupid enough to tell him. Then in his heart, you will still be a beautiful and gentle wife. In the eyes of outsiders, you will still be a gentle and virtuous wife. What are you afraid of?" Jiao Weiner said, "But there is no such thing as an impenetrable wall." "Why not?" "Don't be fooled by those politically correct words," Song Qingshu comforted. "Our affair will never be discovered. Unless what?" Jiao Weiner's heart was suddenly in her throat. She was waiting for him to continue, but she didn't expect him to deliberately pause. Song Qingshu smiled wickedly. He hugged her and whispered in her ear, "Unless I made you pregnant while you were separated from him." Jiao Weiner's face suddenly turned as red as rose petals. She couldn't help but pout coquettishly. She raised her pink fist and began to hit him. "How could I be pregnant with your flesh and blood?" Her pink fist was like an itch. Song Qingshu let her hit him and asked curiously, "Why is it not possible? There was no Durex or Okamoto in this world." Jiao Weiner couldn't possibly know that he had already refined energy into qi. Unless it was intentional, he would never make a woman pregnant. So why was she so sure? Jiao Weiner's face turned red. "If it's not possible, then it's not possible. Anyway, don't ask anymore." She thought that she had been married for many years, and she wasn't an ignorant girl. She had her own methods of contraception, but how could she tell him the reason? Song Qingshu kept asking, but Jiao Weiner just blushed and shook her head. Looking at her shy face, he couldn't help but want to kiss her red lips. Jiao Weiner's body stiffened. She subconsciously wanted to reach out and push him away, but she didn't know why she ended up wrapping her hand around his neck. After a long time, Jiao Weiner finally got a chance to breathe. She quickly asked, "Boss, after this thing is over, will you not pester me anymore?" Song Qingshu saw her pleading eyes and felt pity in his heart. Of course. Jiao Weiner's eyes suddenly brightened, and she suddenly felt a little more relaxed. Feeling the pressure of the man on her, she bit her lips and said, Oneer believes that you are a great hero. In return, Oneer is willing to serve you with all my heart." After that, she blushed and shyly took the initiative to untie her dress. If they were in the Golden Snake Camp, Jiao Weiner wouldn't have been so bold. But now that they were in a foreign country and there was no one they knew, the shackles of morality in her heart finally loosened. Although she had no choice but to submit to the man in front of her a few times, she had to admit that although this man was terrifying and hateful, he also had an extraordinary charm. Especially after that night with him, she knew that she would never be able to forget this man. Many times in the quiet of the night, she woke up from her dreams and was ashamed to find that her body was wet. She could only hold the quilt and stare blankly. Now that the real person was by her side, she finally didn't have to endure that kind of torture. After that, the two of them slept in each other's arms. When they were in a daze, they were suddenly woken up by a knock on the door. "Who is it?" Jiao Weiner suddenly got up, not caring that her crystal white body was exposed to the air. Song Qing-shu also woke up. He gently patted her back, sat up, and hugged her from behind. He bit her ear and said, "Don't be so nervous. With me by your side, even if it's the black and white impermanence, I'll beat them back." Hearing his words, Jiao Weiner smiled sweetly. At this moment, she felt inexplicably at ease. "Oneer, it is me." Hearing the next words of the person outside, the two people in the room were shocked. It was not the black and white ghosts, but someone far more difficult to deal with. It was Jiao Weiner's husband, Luo Liru. "What should we do? What should we do?" Jiao Weiner suddenly panicked. If her husband saw the scene in the room, she would have to cut her throat to be at peace. Chapter 1008. Wait. Jiao Weiner was the calmest person in the room. She stopped her husband and pointed at the back window to tell Song Qing-shu to run away. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. He didn't expect himself to be in such a sorry state. However, since he didn't want to do the dirty business of killing his husband and taking his wife, he could only run away at this time. Song Qing-shu hurriedly put on his clothes. He tossed the clothes back to Jiao Weiner, which made her blush. "Why are you taking so long?" Luo Liru's voice came from outside. He sounded suspicious. "I'm coming." Jiao Weiner buttoned up her shirt as she pushed Song Qing-shu out. She urged him, "Go, go." Before Song Qing-shu left, he suddenly pointed at her abdomen with a strange expression and asked, "I put quite a lot in just now. If Luo Liru sees it later, won't he be exposed?" Jiao Weiner's face was red. She pushed him and said, "Don't worry about it. I have a way." "What?" Luo Liru sounded impatient. Song Qing-shu knew he couldn't delay any longer, so he quickly used his lightness skill and ran out of the back window. After he got out, he was still worried. He was worried that something might happen to Jiao Weiner if Luo Liru became angry. So, he hid under the eaves and listened carefully for any movement inside. Seeing Song Qing-shu leave, Jiao Weiner opened the door. "Why are you taking so long?" Luo Liru walked in and looked at her with confusion. Jiao Weiner discreetly adjusted the wrinkles on her clothes and replied with a normal expression, "I'm wearing clothes, right?" Before her husband could say anything, she asked, "Shouldn't you be in Shandong? Why are you here?" "I wanted to surprise you," Luo Liru said with a laugh. "No surprise, just a scare," Jiao Weiner said. I'm so tired. I'm covered in dust. When I arrived at Yangzhou City, the gate was already closed. In order to see you as soon as possible, I couldn't wait for the city gate to open in the morning, so I climbed over the city wall." Luo Liru stretched his body and walked to the table to pour himself a glass of water. "Let me massage your shoulders," Wang Yao said. Seeing her husband's tired face, Jiao Weiner's heart ached. At the same time, she felt guilty. She didn't ask him how he knew about this place, because she had mentioned it in the letters they had exchanged. "That's great." Luo Liru was overjoyed. Jiao Weiner smiled sweetly. Although her husband was stunned, he gave her a warm feeling. Just as she was about to go over and massage his shoulders, her expression suddenly became extremely strange. It turned out that the filthy stuff that Song Qing-shu had left in her body had already flowed down her thighs, making her feel extremely uncomfortable. What happened? Seeing that she didn't move after a long time, Luo Liru said considerately. If you're also very tired, then forget it. My body is strong, so it's fine. It's nothing. Hearing her husband's words, Jiao Weiner felt even more guilty. Ignoring the sticky feeling in her dress, she ran over and carefully massaged his shoulders. It's so comfortable. Luo Liru closed his eyes and showed a trace of enjoyment. Jiao Weiner massaged even harder. You still haven't told me why you suddenly came to Yangzhou. Luo Liru smiled. Not long ago, I was sent to Muyang for business. I saw that Muyang wasn't very far from Yangzhou, so I took the time to come here to see you. I don't know if the first master will blame me for neglecting my duties when he finds out. He wouldn't dare. Jiao Weiner subconsciously snorted. She thought to herself that he had taken advantage of your wife so much. If he made things difficult for you for this kind of thing, it would be too much. When Song Qing-shu, who was on the eaves outside the window, heard this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. Why wouldn't he dare? Luo Liru asked curiously. Jiao Weiner realized that she had let the cat out of the bag. Fortunately, she reacted quickly and instantly found a way to deal with it. I am very familiar with Qing Qing and the Ninth Princess. If something really happens to you, I will ask them to help. The first master wouldn't dare to go against their wishes. That's true, Luo Liru said with a smile, then revealed an envious expression. The first master is a hero, and he also has the favor of the Ninth Princess and Qing Qing. There is also Miss Zeng of Wanwu Pai, whom many brothers in the camp yearn for day and night. He really has unparalleled luck with women. Do you also want to learn from him and have 3 or 4 wives? Jiao Weiner bit her lip and thought to herself, he even got your wife. Luo Liru's expression changed, and he hurriedly said with a smile, I, Luo Liru, have no virtue or ability. In this life, I have such a good wife like Wan Er. It is already the blessing of several lifetimes. How could I dare to hope for anything else? Brother, Jiao Weiner suddenly choked with sobs, and her heart was unusually moved. This was why even though Song Qing-shu was far superior to her husband in terms of martial arts, appearance, and power, she still firmly maintained this marriage. Staring at Jiao Weiner's flushed face, Luo Liru only felt that his wife was more charming than usual. He couldn't help but reach out his hand to hug her. On the eaves outside the window, Song Qing-shu's heart suddenly jumped. He thought that the most troublesome thing had come, and he didn't know how Jiao Weiner would deal with it. If Luo Liru really found out something, he had to go in to prevent Jiao Weiner from being hurt. Feeling her husband's unruly hands, Jiao Weiner knew what he wanted to do. She hurriedly pushed him away and said hesitantly, Brother, it is not convenient for Wan Er today. Now, the inside of the dress was a mess. If she really undressed, even a fool would understand what was going on. Why is it not convenient? Luo Liru was stunned. Jiao Weiner blushed and said, I'm having my period. Oh, Luo Liru suddenly looked depressed. He had traveled 1,000 miles to come here, and now his wife was on her period. If he had known this was going to happen, he wouldn't have made it a surprise. He would have written a letter to her in advance. Seeing her husband's disappointed face, Jiao Weiner felt even more guilty. She had served another man perfectly, but now she couldn't do her duty as a wife to her husband. After thinking for a moment, Jiao Weiner suddenly said, Brother, I actually have a solution. What? Luo Liru's heart was beating like crazy. He stared at his wife's glossy lips and wondered if Wan Er was going to use. Although they had been married for many years, his wife had always been conservative. She had an air of inviolability about her. Plus, she was marrying Luo Liru to a lower status. Luo Liru treated her like a precious baby. He held her in his hands and was afraid she would fall. He held her in his mouth and was afraid she would melt. Chapter 1009. Jiao Weiner was a bit hesitant, but in the end, she apologized and said, Wan Er is not feeling well these days, so I can't do my duty as a wife. It just so happens that Yangzhou City is famous for its countless brothels. Tomorrow, you will find a good brothel and deal with it. Seeing that it was not what he had expected, Luo Liru was disappointed at first, but he had also heard about the reputation of Yangzhou's brothels for a long time. The reputation of places like Lichuan Courtyard, Yichue House, and Yichue House, even those people in Shandong knew about them. He had long heard from his brethren in the Golden Snake Camp that Yangzhou's skinny horses were famous all over the world. If he was lucky enough to taste them, he would be able to boast in front of his brethren when he got back. Suddenly, he noticed his wife smile. Luo Liru woke up and said, "Waner, do you think I am that kind of person? Don't mention it again." Jiao Weiner and Song Qing-shu had been together for so long that she knew what kind of person a man was. However, she had wronged her husband first, so she couldn't blame him. Instead, she said softly, "Senior brother, you're overthinking it. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm just being considerate of you. You've been working so hard recently, so I sincerely hope that you can go there and relax. Yes, I've been in Yangzhou City for a while now. I've heard a lot about people from all walks of life. Now, the best brothel in Yangzhou City is the Lichun Courtyard. Tomorrow, you can go there and find a popular girl to satisfy your craving. If you don't have enough money, I have more. Anyway, the great master gave me money." Seeing that his wife was sincere, Luo Liru knew what she meant. He was shocked and said, "It is not good to use public money to go to a brothel." He didn't suspect that his wife had money with Song Qing-shu. After all, Song Qing-shu had sent Jiao Weiner to Yangzhou City to be a scout. As her husband, he knew that. Since she had come to Yangzhou City to be a scout, he should have provided her with funds. What is wrong with it? I have done a lot for the leader. What is wrong with spending some money? Besides, he owes you. Even if he knows, he won't say anything. Jiao Weiner deliberately raised her voice, as if she knew Song Qing-shu was still hiding outside. "Of course I won't say anything. Just treat it as compensation to Luo Liru." Song Qing-shu, who was outside the window, had a wry smile on his face. Jiao Weiner had always been a gentle and nice person. He had not expected her to have such a chilly side. Although Luo Liru thought what his wife said about Song Qing-shu owing him was a bit strange, he did not think too much about it. At this moment, his attention was focused on his wife paying him to go to the best brothel. The whole thing seemed too surreal. "Weiner, are you serious?" "Of course I'm serious." Jiao Weiner smiled slightly. "I don't mind men playing around occasionally. What's more, you've really worked hard during this period of time. Firstly, it's not convenient for me. Secondly, I'm not as understanding as those girls, so I'll just let them do it for me." Luo Liru was so touched that tears filled his eyes. "Weiner, don't underestimate yourself like this. There is no wife in this world who understands people better than you." Jiao Weiner sighed. "I'm not as good as you think." Luo Liru immediately said, "No, in my heart, you are the best wife in the world." "Shi Xiao." Jiao Weiner also choked with sobs. Song Qing-shu, who was outside the window, knew that the storm had passed. He chose to leave quietly, dodging the patrolling soldiers along the way. Song Qing-shu returned to the temporary field office of the Daodai Yamen. He sighed. They are deeply in love with each other. With such deep feelings between husband and wife, it makes me seem like a vile person. He had originally decided not to disturb the couple anymore. But in his mind, he could not help but think of Jiao Weiner's gentle and moving actions on the bed. For a moment, he hesitated. In this contradictory state of mind, he gradually fell asleep. When he woke up the next day, Song Go-tu sent him a message. He said that the Yangzhou prefectural magistrate was holding a banquet to entertain the two of them and invited them to come. Seeing Song Go-tu's shining eyes, he knew that he must be looking forward to the Yangzhou prefectural magistrate's bribe. Song Qing-shu was not too interested. After all, his current status was the #1 person in the Jin imperial court. The filial piety from Daxing Prefecture was already extremely generous. Why would he care about a bribe from the Yangzhou prefectural magistrate? Originally, he was about to refuse. But by chance, he found out that the Yangzhou prefectural magistrate, in order to win the favor of the two imperial envoys, had put in a lot of effort. He gathered his advisors for a discussion. He heard that in recent years, the Jin and Qing kingdoms' top officials greatly appreciated the Han culture. The nobles competed with each other to be cultured. So, he decided to invite the two imperial envoys to the Chanji temple to admire the flowers. The Chanji Temple's Chinese peony was a famous site in Yangzhou. It showed the characteristics of Yangzhou and was extremely elegant. Presumably, it would win the favor of the two officials. The Chanji Temple, Song Qingshu's expression was extremely strange. Last night, he had just found out from Jiao Waner that the Song Kingdom's envoy had been quietly placed at the Chanji Temple. He was planning to go and investigate. Who would have thought that the Yangzhou prefectural magistrate would coincidentally come knocking on his door? After Song Qingshu finished washing his face and rinsing his mouth, he saw Song Godo sitting upright in the main hall drinking tea. The Yangzhou prefectural magistrate and the others were respectfully standing to the side. Song Qingshu frowned. In his previous life, the concept of everyone being equal was deeply ingrained in people's hearts. Although he had been in this world for a long time, he was still not used to this kind of attitude of treating other people like slaves. Since the Yangzhou prefectural magistrate was kind enough to invite them to admire the flowers and attend the banquet, he should give him some face. Therefore, Song Qingshu asked him in an amiable manner, "Yesterday I drank too much and forgot prefectural magistrate Darren's name. I wonder." The Yangzhou prefectural magistrate saw that he, as the #1 person in the Jin Kingdom, actually took the initiative to ask for his name. He could not help but be overjoyed. Reporting to Marshal Darren, "Your humble servant. Your humble servant is Yangzhou prefectural magistrate Wu Zhirong." Wu Zhirong. Song Qingshu's countenance changed. Turned out this fellow was the ungrateful and corrupt official in the original work of The Deer and the Cauldron, who betrayed the Zhuang family and, at the same time, almost caused Shuang to lose her life. Now that he knew the other party's identity, how could Song Qingshu be interested in taking care of his feelings? He snorted lightly and also sat next to Song Godu to drink tea and eat breakfast. Wu Zhirong did not know how he had offended him. His face was pale, but he did not dare to ask. For a moment, he stood rooted to the ground, feeling extremely awkward. On the side, Song Gotu opened his mouth and said with a laugh, "Could it be that this man has offended Xiongdi before? How about I remove his official position right now and let him go home to farm?" Although the position of Yangzhou prefectural magistrate was not a small one, how could it enter Song Gotu's eyes? In order to curry favor with this Jin Kingdom's #1 minister, whom he swore to be his sworn brother last night, a mere prefectural magistrate was not a pity to be abandoned. Wu Zhirong was so scared that his whole body trembled like a chaff. With a plop, he knelt down and kowtowed loudly. "Song Gotu Darren, please have mercy. Marshal Darren, please have mercy." Chapter 10:10. Song Qingshu had an idea in his mind. He laughed lightly and said, "What relationship can this person have with me? It's just that when I heard his surname is Wu, I could not help but think of that Ping, Shi Wang who rebelled at Shanghai Pass. He really gave our two countries a headache." Mentioning this matter, Song Gotu also had a distressed expression on his face. "Isn't that so? In order to pacify the rebellion of the 3 border defenses, we spent countless money in rations, mobilized several 100,000 troops. Only then did we have no choice but to stop the war with the Golden Snake Camp. Moreover, Li Kashio, cough. Speaking to this point, he immediately realized that he had made a slip of the tongue, so he casually laughed it off. The Yangzhou officials below did not dare to continue this conversation. One after another, they looked at their ears, their noses, and their hearts. Wu Zhirong hastily tried to clear his name. "To Darren, please understand, although my surname is also Wu, I do not have the slightest relationship with that traitor Wu Sangit." Song Qingshu said with a smile that was not a smile, "Is that so? But I heard that Wu Sangui is from Yangzhou's Gaoyu. He is from the same hometown as Magistrate Wu." No, absolutely not." Wu Zhirong shook his head like a rattle drum. "Although lowly officer holds the position of Yangzhou's magistrate, I am not a native of Yangzhou. This matter is recorded by the Ministry of Appointments. Looks like I wrongly accused Magistrate Darren." Song Qingshu non-committally drank his tea, letting him continue to kneel there. Lowly officer does not dare. Wu Zhirong was drenched in cold sweat. He did not know how he had offended this Jin person, that he was always targeting him. It was Songgotu who came out to smooth things over. Since it is a misunderstanding, then Magistrate Wu, please get up. We are still waiting to see what program you have prepared today. Yes, yes, yes. Please come this way, too, Darren. Wu Zhirong scrambled to his feet. He bowed his head and bowed his waist as he led the way in front. The group of people arrived at Chanji Temple in a grandiose manner. As soon as they got off the sedan chair, they saw a large expanse of brilliant Chinese peonies outside the temple. The sunlight shone on the several thousand Chinese peonies. They were resplendent and magnificent, just like a tapestry. It is indeed worthy of being called Yangzhou's scenery. Songgotu could not help but exclaim. Wu Zhirong was pleased with himself. His previously panicked heart finally calmed down a bit. He had always been good at monopolizing things. And, as early as a few days ago, he had already built a flower shed by the bank of the Chinese peony garden. He had ordered skilled craftsmen to build the shed with pine trees that had not been peeled. The branches and leaves of the trees were still the same as before. The tables and chairs inside the shed were made of natural tree stones. The shed was filled with flowers, trees, and green grass, and then he used bamboo joints to draw water to circulate around the shed, making a gurgling sound. It was indeed a very ingenious idea. During the banquet, it was as if one was in the wilderness, compared to the carved beams and jade inlaid halls of the rich and powerful families. It had a different flavor. In his opinion, the two of them were in high positions and had seen all kinds of magnificent things. Perhaps they were already tired of it. His ingenuity would definitely win the favor of the two of them. Shu from him that the two, He Ching Shu, Temple, Song, and it is Kamawa. That's right, Wu Zhirong said. It must be the monks of the temple who came here to perform religious rites, so that they can set fire to the fire, so that they can give food to the hungry ghosts. Wu Zhirong's painstaking effort was completely wasted. He could not help but feeling very embarrassed. It was unclear if he did not have half a graceful bone in his body, or if he was being sarcastic. He had no choice but to laugh along and said, "Lowly officer's knowledge is shallow. The arrangement here is not in line with Darren's intention. I deserve to die." On the side, Soto also frowned. He did not expect this newly sworn brother of his was unexpectedly a boorish man. He did not know how he became the #1 man in the Jin country. However, compared to elegance and whatnot, naturally profit was more important. Although he rather liked Wu Zhirong's arrangement, his mouth still agreed with Song Qing Shu, making Wu Zhirong's heart and liver tremble. He wished he could find a hole to crawl into. Song Qing Shu saw the guests were already standing respectfully. He knew that he was not their direct superior after all. If he continued to act like this, it would be hard to avoid everybody's face being embarrassed. Thereupon he greeted them and took his seat. The Governor General of Liangjiang had already returned to his office the day before. The Inspector General and Administrative Secretary were still in Yangzhou, accompanying the imperial envoys of the two countries. The rest of the guests were either famous scholars or salt merchants with great scholarly honor. Yangzhou's banquet was extremely exquisite and rich. Just the tea and fruits before the banquet alone had several dozen kinds. Although Song Qing Shu came from the later generation, he was experienced and knowledgeable, yet he could not know everything. After drinking tea for a while, Song Qing Shu was inattentively responding to the guests. Everybody could see that he was not in a good mood, plus with Wu Zhirong's example, nobody dared to provoke him. Everybody fawned on Songgotu. Songgotu was a smooth and slick person. With just a few casual words, he was able to make the officials feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. They were unable to contain their joy. Song Qing Shu was pondering over the matter of the Song dynasty's envoy. He was worried about how to seize the opportunity to investigate the temple, when suddenly he heard a certain official bragging about all kinds of good things about Yangzhou. He could not help but having an idea. He suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Everything about Yangzhou is good, but the monks are not good." Everybody at the banquet looked at each other in dismay. They did not know what he meant by this sudden remark. The administrative secretary Mu Tianyan was an astute and knowledgeable man. He continued, "Marshal Darren is right. Yangzhou's monks are snobbish. They fawn on the government. They bully the poor since ancient times. This time it was Song Qingshu's turn to be startled. Originally, he was deliberately looking for trouble, but listening to the other party's words, it seemed there was an illusion. Thereupon he followed along and asked, "That's right, Mu Darren is a human. You know what is written in the book?" Mu Tianyin said, "The story of the Tang dynasty's Wang Bo by Sarong. Didn't it happen in Yangzhou?" Song Qingshu's face darkened. He had never heard the story the other party was talking about. Fortunately, he was playing the role of a boorish Gene man. He did not mind carrying the reputation of being ignorant and incompetent. Thereupon he laughed and asked, "What story about the yellow cloth by Shalong?" Hearing Wei Xiaobao's vulgar words, Song Goda almost choked on a mouthful of tea in his throat. As long as it was a human, there was not a single person who did not know this story. However, he was worried that the other party would lose face, hence he did not show it. He pretended that it was the first time he heard it. Reporting to Darren, Mu Tianyin said, "It was Wang Bo, not yellow cloth." The story happened in Yangzhou's Changji Temple. During the first year of the Tang Dynasty, this Changji Temple was still called Mulan Courtyard. When the poet Wang Bo was young, his family was poor. He lived in Mulan Courtyard. When the monks in the temple ate, they rang the bell as a signal. When Wang Bo heard the bell, he also went to the dining hall to eat. The monks hated him. One time, they all ate first, and then after the meal they rang the bell. When Wang Bo heard the bell, he went into the dining hall. He saw the monks had already dispersed. The food had already been eaten clean. At first, Song Qingshu was just asking casually, but hearing this, he was filled with righteous indignation. Slapping the table, he angrily said, "Damn it, the monks are detestable." "That's right," Song Goda echoed. "How much does one meal cost?" "These monks are indeed detestable." Seeing the two imperial envoys' interest was aroused, Mu Tianyin was greatly delighted. He continued, "At that time Wang Bo was ashamed. He wrote a poem on the wall. Everything has been settled in the upper hall. I am ashamed to return to Li after the meal." "Return to Li?" Song Qingshu was startled. The officials had been with him for a while now. They knew that this imperial envoy from the Jin Kingdom was not a human at all. It could even be said that he was ignorant and incompetent. Therefore, Mu Tianyin very considerately explained, "Return till he means a monk." Song Qingshu swept his gaze over everybody's expression. He could guess their thoughts pretty well. He could not help but snickering inwardly. "This time you have wrongly accused Tang Kwa. Not to mention him, even I did not know." "And then?" Song Qingshu hastily asked. Chapter 10:11. Mu Tianyin replied. Afterwards, Wang Bo became a high-ranking official. The imperial court sent him to guard Yangzhou, and he went to Mulan Courtyard. Naturally, those monks fawned on him greatly. He went to see if the poem he inscribed on the wall was still there. He saw a piece of precious green muslin was glued to the wall, covering the 2 lines of his poem so that it would not be damaged. Wang Bo was deeply moved. He added 2 more lines of the poem. 30 years ago, the dust covered the surface. Now, the green muslin cage. Song Qingshu knitted his brows and asked, "Did he arrest those bald thieves and beat them with planks?" Mu Tianyin said, "Wang Bo is a refined man. He wanted to inscribe a poem or 2 to show his mockery. That's all." Song Qingshu shook his head and said, "I don't agree with that. A real man stands between heaven and earth. Naturally, he should be happy to repay kindness and enmity. Didn't your Han people's sage Confucius have a saying, 'Repay evil with good'? How to repay good? Repay evil with justice. If it were me, I would definitely vent my resentment." At first, everybody thought he was ignorant and incompetent, and in their hearts, they secretly mocked him for letting such a muddle-headed man become the head of the military and government. But just a moment ago, his power rose. It made everybody break out in cold sweat. Immediately, they had a whole new level of respect for him. Marshal Darren is not only able to fight on the battlefield. Unexpectedly, you are also familiar with the Analects of Confucius. We really admire you. Mu Tianyin and the others hastily flattered him, causing Song Qingshu to feel somewhat dizzy. He thought it was no wonder that so many important people from ancient times to the present could not avoid this custom. The power of this failing gong was indeed not a small matter. Fortunately, Song Qingshu kept his purpose in mind. He seized the opportunity and said, "Since that's the case, why don't we go into the temple and see if Wang Bo's poem is still there?" The group of officials looked at each other in dismay, thinking that there was nothing to see here. Besides, there were green lanterns and ancient Buddha statues inside. It would be terrible if they spoiled the mood of the two imperial envoys. Fortunately, Songgodu gave them a lot of face. Hearing this, he laughed and said, "It just so happens that I am also interested. Loudy, let's go take a look together." Yesterday, when the two of them became sworn brothers, they exchanged their birthdays and 8 characters. Their daughter Wu Yinju was already this big. Naturally, Songgodu was older than Tang Quobian. Therefore, he was the sworn brother. Tang Quobian was the sworn younger brother. Just like that, a group of people walked into the temple in a grandiose manner. The monks in the temple had long received the news and hurriedly came out to welcome them. Song Qingshu's purpose for this trip was to alert the enemy. How could he allow these monks to lead him around? He completely ignored those monks and only cared about barging in. He was already familiar with the structure of a temple. He thought that since the Song dynasty's envoy was going to stay in a temple, he could only stay in the guest room. Therefore, although he looked like he was wandering aimlessly, he was actually heading straight for the guest room. "Benefactors, please wait. Up ahead is the lodging for our temple's devotees. There's nothing worth seeing." When Song Qingshu was about to walk into the courtyard, a monk beside him stopped him with his forehead covered in sweat. "I just want to look around. Is there a problem?" Song Qingshu purposely said while glaring at him. "I'm afraid it's not very convenient. There are many devotees inside. If we disturb their rest, who will come to our temple to pay for the incense?" The monk braced himself and said. Song Qingshu laughed and said, "So you are concerned about the incense money. Guards, give this master 500 taels of silver as my incense money." A Jin soldier came forward and handed a bag of silver to the monk. Song Qingshu smiled and said, "Now I'm also a devotee. It shouldn't be a problem for me to go in and have a look at the lodging you provided, right?" The monk hurriedly said, "I can't make the decision. I have to report it to the abbot." Before he could finish, Song Qingshu suddenly flew into a rage and said, "You keep making excuses. Could it be that there's some shameful secret in there? Guards, search this place for me." "Absolutely not." The monk wanted to stop him, but he was kicked to the ground by a Jin soldier beside him. Song Qingshu was the first to step into the courtyard. Seeing the nervous expressions of the monks in the Chanji temple, even Song Gotu and the others became suspicious. They hurriedly signaled their subordinates to rush in as well. After Song Qingshu entered the courtyard, he allowed the soldiers to wreak havoc in each room while he stood still and looked around. Soon, he noticed a solitary house in the depths of the courtyard. It was faintly discernible in the pine forest. "It must be here." Song Qingshu was delighted. No matter how well the Song envoys hid their tracks, it was unlikely that they would live together with the ordinary devotees outside. As a team of envoys, they still had to be somewhat particular. The environment of this house was quiet and secluded. It was the best place to stay. Song Qingshu did not bring many soldiers with him. Seeing that they were searching the rooms outside, he did not bother to call for them. He was even more unwilling to call for the soldiers under Songgota's command. Just like that, he walked towards the house alone. By this time, Songgota had also noticed something unusual. He ordered his soldiers to surround the entire courtyard and not let a single person escape. Then, he noticed Song Qingshu's movements and hastily led his men to follow him. Songgota jogged for a while. Seeing that the distance between him and Song Qingshu was getting bigger and bigger, he was secretly surprised. Song Qingshu was walking a bit too fast. Song Qingshu had already used his qi to investigate the entire house. He faintly sensed that there was someone in one of the rooms. He walked straight to that room. When he reached the door, he did not knock, but kicked it open. At first, he thought that he could conveniently capture 1 or 2 Song envoys and see if he could obtain any information regarding Li Kashio's intentions from their mouths. Who would have thought that what greeted him was a woman's scream? Once this scream was heard, everyone in the courtyard was stunned. Sanggotu also staggered and almost fell down. How could there be a woman in this Buddhist temple? The officials in Yangzhou looked as if they had just lost their parents. Unexpectedly, under their jurisdiction, this kind of scandal had occurred. Furthermore, they were caught red-handed by an imperial envoy. It could be said that they had lost all their face outside the country. If the imperial court really investigated this matter, perhaps none of these people would have a good time. Song Qingshu's eyes were wide open. The woman in the room had obviously just woken up. It looked like she had heard the commotion in the courtyard and was preparing to put on her clothes. He did not know if it was because she was flustered or something else, but after putting on her clothes for a long time, she did not put them on. In the end, just as she was putting on her clothes, Song Qingshu burst in. This woman had the countenance of a flower and the countenance of the moon. She was approximately 20 years old. Looking at the way she was dressed, she was probably already married. At this moment, her white, jade-like face was filled with alarm. Song Qingshu recalled what Jiao Wanner had told him about the Song dynasty's envoy the previous night. This woman must be the young madam of Cloud Manor, Cheng Yaojia. In the original work, she was the disciple of the Chuanjin sect sage of tranquility, Sun Bu-er. In the past, Ouyang coveted this eldest miss of the Cheng family's beauty. Fortunately, Guojing and Huang Rong lent a helping hand, allowing him to preserve his chastity. Afterwards, in Ox Village, he fell in love with Lu Guaning at first sight. Under the auspices of Huang Yaoshi, they became husband and wife. She had always been on good terms with Guojing and Huang Rong. Looking at the blushing face of the woman in front of him, Song Qingshu could not help but gloomily say, "It's not like you are naked. Is there a need to scream like this?" Chapter 10:12. Song Qingshu could not help but feel gloomy. If he had seen something, it would have been fine. But Cheng Yaojia was clearly wearing clothes. She was only lacking a coat. It would be good if I could see an undergarment. Song Qingshu felt really unlucky. He did not gain any advantage, but instead got himself into trouble. Cheng Yaojia originally came with her husband, but yesterday she suddenly felt unwell. Lu Guaning was considerate to his wife, so he let her rest in her room while he went out with the head envoy Lu Yu to inquire about the situation. While she was in a daze, she suddenly heard noises coming from outside the door. At first she did not think much of it, but later she heard that it seemed to be the Qing soldiers searching. This was not a small matter. She hastily got up to put on her clothes and just happened to bump into Song Qingshu coming in. She was a very traditional young lady from a noble family. Normally, in front of guests, even if her hair was a little messy, it would be very inappropriate. Not to mention, she was only wearing pajamas and her clothes were disheveled. In addition, she had an extremely shy temperament. When she talked to strangers, she would blush. While she was putting on her clothes, a burly man with a full beard suddenly rushed in. Her mind was immediately filled with fear, and she subconsciously screamed, "Don't scream. Put on your clothes first. The others will be here soon." From the corner of his eyes, Song Qingshu glanced at Sanggotu and the others who were jogging over and reminded her in a low voice. Cheng Yaojia was startled. She did not expect him to say that. She unconsciously replied, "Can you turn around?" Hearing her voice, Song Qingshu's entire body trembled. He wondered if this woman's husband's bones would melt from listening to her coquettish voice every day. He couldn't help but laugh and say, "There's nothing on your body that's exposed, so why should I turn around? Of course, if you don't want change, that's fine. Unless you want more men to see your body immediately." Thinking of that terrible scene, Cheng Yaojia shook her head like a rattledrum. At this time, even she could hear the approaching footsteps. How could she care about anything else? She clenched her teeth and blushed as she put on her clothes in front of a strange man. He had just put on his clothes when Sanggotu arrived with his men. When he saw the woman inside, his countenance immediately changed. Song Qingshu was the first to speak awkwardly. "All right, no wonder those monks made excuses when we wanted to come in. So it turns out that this is a den of filth. Men, bring this woman back. I want to interrogate her properly." Song Qingshu had originally planned to take this opportunity to find out the truth of the Song emissaries and find out Li Kaxiu's true intentions. He had never thought of harming these Song emissaries. After all, they were all Han people. If he caused them to fall into the Tatar court's hands, these people's life and death would no longer be under his control. Therefore, he took the first step to control them in his own hands. Based on the relationship between him and Songgotu, naturally, it would not be convenient for him to fight over these people. Songgotu's expression was strange. Right now, he could clearly see the appearance of the woman in the room. Her figure was graceful. She stood there timidly. Her slender waist was so small that it seemed as if a gust of wind would break her. Especially the delicate and bashful temperament on her face. Even he, who was not fond of women, was incessantly moved. What interrogation! I am afraid he has taken a fancy to her beauty and wants to seize the opportunity to take her for himself. Songgotu cursed incessantly in his heart. However, from the attire of the woman in front of him, he could tell that she was a Han. Naturally, he would not ruin his sworn brother's interest for a Han woman. That's very good. Bring her back and interrogate her properly. Songgotu laughed aloud. One after another, all the officials in Yangzhou also agreed. The people present were all shrewd people who could not see through Song Qingshu's intention. Originally, if this matter was not handled properly, it would be a disgrace to the country. Other than Songgotu, all the officials present would be out of luck. But now that Song Qingshu was interested in this woman, everything was easy to solve. Using this woman as a gift to shut his mouth, turning this difficult problem into an elegant matter. Everybody was happy, why not? As for this woman's innocence, who among the officials present, big or small, would care? They let Song Qingshu's subordinates tie Cheng Yaojia up. Cheng Yaojia was about to resist, but suddenly she felt her waist go numb and all the jinqi in her body disappeared. She could only watch helplessly as she fell into the enemy's hands. Song Qingshu discreetly withdrew his fingers into his sleeve. The reason he made a move was because he did not want Cheng Yaojia to display her martial arts skill. Right now, in the eyes of Songgotu and the others, at most it was just a scandal of a Buddhist temple hiding a woman. Since they had taken her, this matter had already been settled. These officials would not look for trouble and interrogate those monks again. But if Cheng Yaojia revealed her extraordinary martial arts skill, this matter would become a big deal. Since she knew martial art, it was obvious that she was not a woman from a good family who was imprisoned by the Chanji Temple. These officials would certainly realize that there was a conspiracy. Once they thoroughly investigated, the matter of the Southern Song envoy would be exposed. When that time came, the situation would not be easy to control. A group of people came to the temple to admire the flowers. In the end, they caught a young woman who was as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as jade. Songgotu knew that this sworn brother of his was anxious to return home, so he suggested that they return to their mansion to rest and let Song Qingshu interrogate the captured prisoner. The rest of the officials revealed a knowing smile. One by one, they bowed and nodded their heads as they escorted the two people out of the temple. When they left the courtyard, a middle-aged man tried to rush over from the corner of a distant corridor, but he was firmly held back by the people behind him. Guanyin, calm down, calm down. Uncle, now that Yaojia has been captured by the Qing army, how do you expect me to calm down? These two people were Lu Guanyin and Lu Yu. Although their ages were not too different, according to the genealogy of the 6 families of Shanin, Lu Yu is Lu Guanyin's uncle. The two of them had originally gone to the city to inquire about the other country's envoys. In the end, they found out that a group of officials had unexpectedly gone to the Chanji Temple today. At that time, they felt that something bad was going to happen and immediately rushed back. Unfortunately, they were one step too late. Guanyin, right now there's so many soldiers outside. If you rush out, you will only be throwing your life away. How will you get Yaojia? Lu Yu hastily said. Don't tell me that I am just going to watch my wife fall into the hands of the Tatars and do nothing. When he thought of his wife's beauty and the rumors of the female enlightened master's lecherous nature, Lu Guanyin shuddered with fear. Of course we can't do nothing. We will split into 2 groups. One group will contact Li Kaxiu and have him come out to rescue her. The other group will gather experts. When the enemy is not on guard at night, we will rush to where they are staying and rescue her, Liu quickly said. Only then did Liu Guanyin calm down a little. Uncle is really thoughtful. All right, we will split into two groups. Song Qing-shu and his group left the Changji temple and saw that Miss Cheng had been thoughtfully sent to his palanquin. He couldn't help but smile. Power is really a good thing. You didn't need to do anything, and there would be people who would take care of everything for you. Because of today's matter, Wu Zhirong was anxious and fearful. Suddenly, he felt that his future was dim. He was in a daze and unknowingly fell behind the main group. At this moment, a delicate shout suddenly came from the nearby thicket. Wu Zhirong, you dog thief. Today, I will take your life to comfort the souls of the Zhuang family in heaven. Chapter 10:13. He saw a young girl suddenly sprang up from the thicket and thrust her sword toward Wu Zhirong's chest. Wu Zhirong turned his head to look. He saw a cold glint in front of his eyes. He was so scared that he pissed his pants. He was behind the main force. He did not know any martial art. The opponent's sword had been prepared for a long time, so it was difficult for him to escape. It's just that he was as timid as a mouse. After being frightened, his legs went soft. He could no longer stand steadily and rolled down the ladder in front of the temple, coincidentally avoiding the young girl's sure-kill sword. The young girl stabbed empty air. She could not help but stare blankly. Originally, she wanted to kill him in one strike and then run away 1,000 li away. Who would have thought that she missed? If she did not retreat in time, perhaps even she would be in danger. However, thinking of the Zhuang family's blood feud, she clenched her pearly white teeth and still brandished her sword in pursuit. She would rather perish together with Wu Zhirong than see him get away scot-free. However, by this time the imperial bodyguards in the vicinity had already reacted. They surrounded her. Although the young girl's martial arts skill was brilliant, the imperial bodyguards of the Jin and Qing, two prime ministers, were very formidable. Very soon they were surrounded by danger. By this time, Song Qing-shu had already seen the young girl's appearance clearly. He was startled. Wasn't this Shuang whom he had not seen for a long time? How did she come to Yangzhou? He was about to shout at his subordinates to stop, but Song Godu had already spoken first. Don't hurt that girl. Capture her alive. His voice had just fallen when the acupoints of the young girl's back were sealed by the imperial bodyguards, and then several steel sabers were placed directly on her neck. Song Qing-shu hesitated for a moment. Shuang was under his control, unless he made a move in public. Otherwise, he would not be able to let her go if he helped her in secret under the watchful eyes of the public. Moreover, listening to Song Godu's words just now, it was obvious that he still remembered his friendship with Wei Xiaobao in the past. Shuang would not be in any danger in his hand for the time being. That being the case, he decided to bide his time and wait until he returned to the yamen before looking for an opportunity to rescue her. Song Godu coughed and ordered his imperial bodyguards, "Take this girl back. I want to interrogate her carefully. I want to know what kind of conspiracy she has, whether she has any other accomplices." While saying that, he secretly signaled Shuang with his eyes, telling her not to resist needlessly and hurt herself. By this time, Shuang also recognized Song Godu. She was exceptionally intelligent. Naturally, she understood that the other party did not have any evil intention. Thereupon, she nodded without showing any trace. Although the small movements between the two of them were subtle, it could not be hidden from the eyes of observant people. Song Qing-shu smiled faintly and felt relieved. However, right now, these people in Yangzhou's officialdom had strange expressions on their faces. They thought that the Jin Kingdom's master caught a beautiful young lady and brought her back for interrogation, and our great Qing's master caught a beautiful young lady and also brought her back for interrogation. Hey, what are they trying to do? Do they think we are fools? They only dared to think these words in their hearts. How could they dare to say a word? He didn't even dare to show the slightest expression on his face. He just very considerately offered to send the two of them back to the yamen. Hugging these two beauties, he must be in a hurry to do something. Who would be so blind as to take up the time of these two lords? Cheng Yaojiao was arranged to sit in Song Qing-shu's sedan chair. Shuang was also arranged to sit in Song Gotu's sedan chair. However, in the past, Song Gotu and Wei Xiaobao became sworn brothers. If the rumor reached Kangxi's ears, how could he dare to do this kind of melonfield plum under melonfield? Originally, he wanted Shuang to stay in the sedan chair while he rode the horse, but the opposite party's current identity was that of an assassin. It would be a bit too obvious. Therefore, Songota had no choice but to let the imperial bodyguard suppress Shuang and follow behind. But Song Qingshu knitted his brows. How could he bear to see Shuang suffer this kind of crime? Thereupon he opened his mouth and said, "This young lady looks so delicate and weak. It would be very difficult for people who do not know the truth to believe that she is an assassin. If by any chance the common people in the city see her, perhaps they would secretly accuse us of forcibly abducting a civilian girl. It would be hard to avoid damaging the imperial court's face. I think it would be better to do it this way. We'll specially free up a sedan chair, tie her up, and lock her inside. This way she won't be seen by the common people in the city." Originally, Sun also had the same idea. Hearing this, he was greatly delighted. Xiongdi is really thoughtful. Let's do it this way. The Yangzhou officialdom looked at each other in dismay. They thought, are you treating a criminal or a young lady from a rich family? You are speaking in such a dignified manner. Isn't it because you are afraid that the little beauty will be scorched by the sun? However, since the two imperial envoys had spoken, how could they oppose it? Very soon, there were even some officials who took the initiative to let Shuang ride on their sedan chair. Seeing Shuang had been properly settled, Song Qingshu finally felt relieved. He stepped directly into his sedan chair. Seeing the curtain was lifted, Miss Cheng's body trembled visibly. Trembling, she said, Don't come over." Song Qingshu could not help laughing. "This is broad daylight. There are so many people outside. It's not like I can do anything to you." Miss Cheng trembled even more violently. She weakly said, "Could it be that when there's no one around, you are going to conspire against me?" Song Qingshu sat his buttocks down and laughed aloud. "That depends on your performance," he said. Miss Cheng hastily moved her body sideways, as if being touched by him was a great sin. Unfortunately, the sedan chair was only so big. No matter how hard she tried, it would be difficult for her not to touch him. I don't want to sit." Miss Cheng blushed. She simply did not dare to look him in the eyes. She hastily stood up. Her acupoints were sealed. She could not use the Jinqi in her body, but it did not affect her daily movements. Who would have thought that, at this moment, the sedan chair bearers happened to lift the sedan chair? Miss Cheng lost her balance and threw herself into Song Qingshu's bosom. Song Qingshu smelled a fragrant wind assailing his nostrils. A warm and soft body fell directly into his bosom. Immediately, he looked at her with a sigh. "Turns out you want to sit in my bosom. Why didn't you say so earlier? Why did you waste so much effort?" Miss Cheng was so anxious that she was about to cry. Nonsense, I am not." Song Qingshu stretched out his arms and directly hugged her. "Since I am favored by a beauty, I won't be polite." Miss Cheng cried out in alarm and hurriedly struggled. "Let me go." However, she was too weak to move. Seeing her eyes full of tears, Song Qingshu timely said, "Answer my question first, then I will consider letting you go." Miss Cheng hurriedly said, then quickly asked. Hearing her angry voice being so coquettish, Song Qingshu thought that such a woman was born to be spoiled by men. Any man who saw her coquettish and timid appearance would inevitably feel protective. "What's your name?" Although he had roughly guessed her identity, he still needed to confirm it. "My surname is Cheng." Miss Cheng lowered her head and whispered. Song Qingshu had been waiting for her to continue, but who knew that she would only say her surname? He could not help but feel depressed. "What's your name?" Miss Cheng shook her head. After being asked several times, she finally whispered, "According to the rules of our Han people, a woman's name can only be known by her parents and her husband." Chapter 10:14. Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. She was really a Jiangnan girl. I'm a lady Junren. I don't have to follow your Han people's rules. Tell me quickly." Miss Cheng pursed her lips and shook her head. Song Qingshu rolled his eyes and said with a smile, I understand. It turns out that you clearly want to sit in my arms, but you're too embarrassed to say it. So, you deliberately used this method to make me continue to hold you, right? No, Miss Chung said anxiously. As if to prove her innocence, she continued, My name is Miss Chung. Can you let me go now? Miss Chung, what a beautiful name. Song Qing-shu sighed in admiration. Didn't you just say that besides your parents, you can only tell your husband your name? Since you're telling me now, do you want me to be your husband? Miss Chung was ashamed and angry. You obviously forced me to say it. Besides, I already have a husband. What does it matter if you have a husband? Just get a divorce. Then I'll take you back to the Jin Kingdom and let you enjoy the feeling of being a first-rank lady of honor. Song Qingshu said with a smile. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. His frivolous temperament was really a headache. He couldn't control his mouth. I don't want to. Miss Chung was worried that more people would see the situation inside the sedan chair, so she instinctively screamed and lowered her voice. Noticing her behavior, Song Qingshu was even more confident. This kind of woman seemed to be easy to deal with. Since you don't want a divorce, then there's no problem. I don't mind you and your husband continuing to be husband and wife. That strong sense of accomplishment and conquest will make me like it even more. Song Qingshu thought that since he was pretending to be a Jin barbarian, a bit vulgar would fit his character. You're shameless. Miss Chung was so angry that her face turned red. Unfortunately, she was a weak woman and had no power to resist at this time. She could only try to reason with him. Don't you Jin people boast that you are the most trustworthy? Didn't you just say that as long as I answer your question, you will let me go? Song Qingshu stretched out his finger and waved it in front of her. I have to correct you. What I said just now was that if you answer the question, I would consider letting you go. I didn't say that I would definitely let you go. Chung Yaojia was so angry that her whole body trembled. She had never seen such a hateful person in her life. She was afraid that he could be compared to Ouyang Ke. Song Qingshu said, Well, if you answer a few more questions for me, I'll let you go. How about that? No. Miss Chung simply turned her head and said, You don't keep your word. Even if I promise you, you won't let me go. Song Qingshu smiled and said, If you answer me, maybe I will let you go. If you don't answer, I definitely won't let you go. How will you know if you don't try? Don't tell me that you really like staying in my arms like I said before. Bah, shameless. Miss Chung spat with a red face. Then I'll take it that you agree to our deal. Song Qingshu's voice suddenly became serious. After you came to Yangzhou, have you seen Jiangzhi's Admiral Li Keqiu? Miss Chung was frightened and subconsciously blurted out. How did you know? Speaking to this point, she realized that it was inappropriate and hastily stopped talking. Song Qingshu replied, You don't need to know how I know. In any case, I know. Otherwise, do you think I really went to the temple to admire the flowers? Miss Chung bit her lip and said, Just give up. I won't tell you. Even if I hold you like this, you won't tell me? While speaking, Song Qingshu took the opportunity to hug her waist. He felt that her lower abdomen was flat without a trace of fat. He thought that it was good for a woman to know martial arts. Even after being married for so many years, her figure was still so good. Miss Cheng's whole body trembled. However, right now her mind was filled with the righteousness of her country. She thought that she could not let the Jin people extract her information. Therefore, she just tightly closed her lips and refused to say another word. Little girl, you are really stubborn. Song Qingshu did not mind. It seems that simply hugging you is not enough to make you afraid. How about this? Let's change the way we play. From now on, I will count. If you still don't want to tell me, then every 10 counts I will take off one of your clothes. What do you think? Miss Cheng's body trembled, and there was a clear fear in her eyes. 10, 9, 8, 7. Every time Song Qingshu counted, the struggle in Miss Cheng's eyes became more intense. However, this matter was of great importance. If the secret was leaked, she would not be able to bear the consequences. It seems that you don't mind being undressed. After counting to 1, Song Qingshu sneered. His fingers reached for the button on her collar. It must be known that other than her husband, no other man had ever touched her like this. Feeling the other party's hand reach for her clothes, Miss Chung was ashamed and resentful. Her whole body trembled even more violently. Song Qing-shu deliberately slowed down his movements, magnifying Cheng Yaojia's suffering several times over. Taking off her clothes was not the goal. It was only a means to force her to submit. Miss Cheng did not have many clothes on her body. If she was taken off too quickly, it would be a bit embarrassing if her psychological defense was not broken. After all, Song Qing-shu only wanted to know the situation between the Song dynasty's envoy and Li Keqiu. He did not really want to humiliate the shy woman in his arms. After taking off her outermost clothes, Song Qing-shu deliberately put it in front of his nose and smelled it. It smells so good. I wonder if the last one will smell even better. After saying these words, Song Qing-shu felt a chill run down his spine. Why did he sound like a scoundrel who molested a good woman? Fortunately, he was using the identity of Tang Quobian. Even if this matter were to spread, he would not be afraid. Otherwise, he would not have the face to mingle in Jianghu in the future. Being deliberately provoked by him, Miss Cheng was simply ashamed and resentful. She opened her mouth and bit down, trying to bite off the root of her tongue to preserve her innocence. Fortunately, Song Qing-shu was worried that he would provoke her too much, so he had been paying attention to her reaction. In the nick of time, he stuffed his fingers into her mouth and prevented her from biting her tongue. However, the bite force of a human's teeth was amazing. Song Qing-shu was not worried that his internal force would injure her, so he forcibly used 2 fingers to withstand her desperate bite. Hiss! Song Qing-shu sucked in a breath of cold air. Miss Cheng saw that her suicide attempt had failed. Not only did she not let go, but she continued to bite even harder. Hey, are you born in the year of the dog? Song Qing-shu could not bear it anymore. He reached out his hand and brushed her chin, making her unable to bite. Only then did he have the opportunity to take his fingers out of her mouth. With a depressed expression, he said, "Unexpectedly, you still want to bleed." Looking at the deep teeth marks, Miss Cheng did not expect that this was her masterpiece. She first revealed an embarrassed and shy expression, but when she thought of the hateful man behind her, her guilt immediately disappeared. Instead, she raised her small face with a proud expression. Seeing her expression, Song Qing-shu suddenly became angry. His brain heated up, and he directly pinched her chest. Humph! I have to collect some interest. Chapter 10:15. Cheng Yaojia's whole body immediately froze. Her proud expression also froze on her face. That soft touch made Song Qing-shu's anger disappear in an instant. Instead, it was replaced by a strong sense of embarrassment. He felt that what he was doing was not very sincere. Humph! This is your punishment for what you just did. Song Qing-shu retracted his hand, coughed twice, and hurriedly changed the topic. Let's continue with our previous agreement. If you still don't tell me after dozens of times, don't blame me for being impolite. Cheng Yaojia's whole mind went blank. That pure place that only her husband could touch was actually defiled by this man. She kept thinking about this matter in her mind, so much so that Song Qing-shu only reacted after counting to 10. It seems that you don't care if I take off your clothes. Song Qing-shu was also depressed. Why was this woman so stubborn? Couldn't she just tell him directly? Why did she have to make it so difficult for him? No! Cheng Yaojia crossed her arms in front of her chest, trying to stop him from taking off this second piece of clothing. Then I'll ask you again. If you tell me, I won't bully you like this anymore, Song Qing-shu said softly. Cheng Yaojia shook her head and just tightly crossed her arms. Song Qing-shu frowned, thinking that he couldn't do anything to a rich young miss like her. He reached out and brushed her elbows. Cheng Yaojia suddenly felt her hands go numb. She could no longer hold them in front of her chest and weakly drooped down. Song Qing-shu deliberately snorted. Then, he reached into her clothes and took off the second piece of clothing. Although he was careful enough, he still couldn't stop it. However, it was inevitable that he would occasionally touch her body. Cheng Yaojia's face was as red as a rose. Song Qing-shu was also embarrassed, so he could only say, "You have to think carefully. Right now, you only have one piece of clothing left on your body. If you refuse to answer, I'm afraid that we will have to face each other." Although Song Qing-shu knew that she should still be wearing a dudu, This was not the era of his previous life where bikinis were everywhere. If she exposed her doo-doo in front of a strange man, he was afraid that it would be no different from being naked. Just kill me. Cheng Yaojia bit her lips so hard that they almost bled. Song Qingshu knew that it would be useless to continue to interrogate her in her current state of mind. Thus, he changed his strategy and did not rush to count. Instead, he changed to a gentle tone and said, "Miss Cheng, I'm already married." Cheng Yaojia coldly snorted. "Well, Mrs. Six," Song Qingshu cleared his throat. "I don't know why you're so stubborn. You don't want to tell me, even at the risk of losing your innocence." Miss Cheng gritted her teeth and said, "Compared to national righteousness, my personal innocence is nothing." Song Qingshu was immediately filled with deep veneration. He didn't expect that although she looked weak and delicate on the outside, she was actually so unyielding on the inside. After a moment of silence, Song Qingshu sighed and said, "I was too impetuous. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me." After saying that, he put back the clothes he had just taken off, piece by piece. Cheng Yaojia didn't understand. She turned her head and looked at him in surprise. "Mrs. Six, you don't need to be surprised. The reason why I did that was because I wanted to get some information from you. Mrs. Six is righteous. Even if I took off your clothes, it would be meaningless." Seeing that Cheng Yaojia's face had turned red, Song Qingshu smiled and said, "I admire Mrs. Six's chastity and broad-mindedness, so I don't want to continue to offend you. Right now, there are too many people outside, so it's not convenient for me to let you go. But you can rest assured, after the sky turns dark, I will find an opportunity to let you go." "Really?" Cheng Yaojia looked at him with an incredulous expression. Song Qingshu sternly replied, "Since I respect Mrs. Six, how could I lie to you? You lied to me a lot just now," Cheng Yaojia muttered in a low voice. Seeing Song Qingshu's helpless expression, she shyly smiled and said, "Thank you." To be able to get Mrs. Six's sincere smile, my efforts were not in vain. Song Qingshu sighed. Cheng Yaojia's face turned red and her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. "Can you let me get up first?" She sat in Song Qingshu's arms and faintly felt as if she was being prodded by something. She was no longer an unmarried girl, so how could she not know what was going on? That kind of masculine and oppressive pressure made her voice tremble. Song Qingshu was startled and immediately realized something. Compared to Cheng Yaojia's shy face, he was much more open-minded. He let go of her and said with a smile, "My body's natural reaction. I hope Mrs. Six won't take it to heart." Cheng Yaojia grunted. After she got up, she lowered her head and stood there. Her eyes stared at her feet, and her hands kept pulling up the corners of her clothes. She didn't even dare to look at him. However, at this time, she had an unexpected thought in her mind. Although this man looks rough, I didn't expect him to be so careful. He actually wore women's clothes perfectly. Looking at her restrained appearance, Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. He patted the chair beside him and said, "Aren't you tired of standing like this? Come and sit down." Cheng Yaojia didn't dare to walk into the trap. She immediately shook her head like a rattle. Song Qingshu was startled and immediately reacted, "I was rash. How could you sit with another man? How about this, you sit and I'll stand." As he spoke, he stood up and gave the chair to her. "You sit by yourself." At this time, Cheng Yaojia still hadn't come back to her senses. The fiendish Jean man had suddenly turned into a modest and courteous gentleman. No matter how big the hole in her brain was, she couldn't figure out what was going on. "In my hometown, there is a custom. Ladies first." Song Qingshu squeezed her shoulders and pushed her into the chair. He then sat on the floor opposite her. Cheng Yaojia was embarrassed to look at him. She subconsciously turned her face away and whispered, "I don't think you are that bad." Song Qingshu smiled with a playful expression and said, "Just now, someone said that I was despicable and shameless." Cheng Yaojia's face heated up and she subconsciously muttered, "Your behavior just now was despicable and shameless." Song Qingshu knew that he had gone overboard just now, so he smiled and didn't try to defend himself. He just quietly looked at her fair and tender face. A red line visible to the naked eye appeared on Cheng Yaojia's neck. Being stared at like this, she was obviously extremely shy. Ew. What's her name? Cheng Yaojia felt uncomfortable under his gaze and hurriedly tried to divert his attention. Song cough cough. My name is Tang Kuobian. Song Qing Shu almost spilled the beans. Oh, Cheng Yaojia said, oh, and didn't say anything else. She just quietly stared at the wall of the carriage and looked at the scenery outside through the gaps near the window. Seeing that she didn't speak, Song Qing Shu was happy to appreciate this quiet and virtuous woman in front of him. The two of them looked at each other while one looked out the window. Unknowingly, they had already returned to the Dao Tai Yamen. Since you have been diligent in updating these days, let me pull out your guaranteed monthly tickets. Chapter 10:16. When the sedan chair stopped, Cheng Yaojia was caught off guard. Because of inertia, she fell into Song Qingshu's arms. The sedan chair bearers that were assigned to him were all experienced people. They were able to start and stop the sedan chair smoothly. Unfortunately, Cheng Yaojia was flustered by Song Qingshu's stare and didn't notice that the sedan chair had stopped. As a result, she fell into Song Qingshu's arms again. Song Qingshu admired her character. This time, he didn't take advantage of her. He gently helped her up and said, Mrs. Liu, be careful. Thank you. Originally, in Cheng Yaojia's heart, men were all smelly. Even her husband, Liu Guaning, was the same. Every time her husband didn't bathe several times, she wouldn't let him enter her room. However, this man's body had a nice smell. It was different from any expensive incense in the world. It was a natural smell. If one had to compare it to something, it would be the smell of sunlight. I'm afraid I'll have to inconvenience Mrs. Liu. With so many people watching, it's not convenient for me to treat Mrs. Liu like a distinguished guest. Through the neckline, Song Qingshu could vaguely see that her fair and slender neck was gradually blushing. He couldn't help but secretly laugh. In The Legend of the Condor Heroes, she was extremely shy. He didn't expect that after being married for so many years, she would still be this shy. I understand. Cheng Yaojia grunted. Since he had informed her in advance, Song Qingshu didn't delay any longer. He planned to find a rope to symbolically tie her hands. At least, it would make her look like a captive. Unfortunately, there was no rope in the sedan chair. Song Qingshu looked around for a long time before his eyes finally fell on the silk belt around her waist. Noticing that he was staring at her belt, Cheng Yaojia panicked and hurriedly asked, What are you looking for? Song Qingshu explained to her. Cheng Yaojia secretly spat and thought that this person was really absurd. How about she take off her belt and give it to him? I have a handkerchief here. What do you think? Cheng Yaojia took out a snow-white handkerchief from her bosom and timidly looked at him. Very well. Song Qingshu also felt that it was a little too sensational to untie a girl's belt. But when he took a look at the silk scarf, he saw that it was obviously the extremely expensive Sioux embroidery. There was even a pair of mandarin ducks embroidered in the corner of the scarf. He couldn't help but smile and say, This handkerchief is probably a pair. Cheng Yaojia blushed. She grunted and said in an almost inaudible voice, This was originally embroidered by me for Lu Lang, but he felt that the makeup was too heavy and didn't want to wear it, so I kept it for myself. Isn't your husband too insensitive? Song Qingshu couldn't help but say. Cheng Yaojia said anxiously, Don't say bad things about him. I was rude. Song Qingshu smiled and didn't explain further. He casually tied her hands and led her out of the sedan. The officials outside had been waiting for a while. When they saw Wei Xiaobao leading Cheng Yaojia out, each and every one of them had a dubious expression on their faces. They were sizing up the two of them in a rather ruminating manner. Song Qingshu didn't need to think to know what kind of filthy thoughts these people had in their minds. He didn't mind it at all and casually began to socialize with them. The people present were all smart people. How could they waste the two high-ranking officials' time? After chatting for a while, they took their leave one after another. Song Qingshu worriedly looked at Shuang. He found that other than a bit of dejected surprise on her face, she seemed to be in good spirits. It was obvious that Song Goto also had something on his mind. After exchanging some pleasantries with Song Qing-shu, he took back to his courtyard. Song Qing-shu led Cheng Yaojia back to his room. He untied the handkerchief in her hand, but he did not return it to her. Instead, he took advantage of the opportunity to put it in his bosom. "Madam, I really like your embroidery skill. I wonder if Madam can give it to me?" Cheng Yaojia could not help but feel very bashful. She thought that she embroidered it for her husband. How could she give it to him? However, the other party had already put the handkerchief in his lapel. It would be inappropriate for her to snatch it back. Moreover, if she angered the other party, the game would not make up for the loss. With this thought in her mind, she pretended not to mind and said, "If you like it, you can take it." Song Qing-shu was very proud of himself. This girl's face was too thin. If she really wanted to take it back from him, he would be too embarrassed to forcibly keep it. But since she agreed, he would gladly accept this exquisite embroidered handkerchief. "Madam Lu," he said, "please rest here for a while. I have something to do. I need to go out." Cheng Yaojia softly nodded. Song Qing-shu then walked out. He had only taken a few steps when he came back with a worried expression. "Madam Lu, what do you think of my character?" Cheng Yaojia quietly glanced at him and replied in a low voice, "You don't seem to be like those rumored gene totters." "Damn it." Song Qing-shu immediately laughed and said, "Since Madam believes me, that's good. I respect Madam's chastity, so I have decided to let you go. However, right now, there are countless pairs of eyes watching the Dao Tai Yamen, so it is not convenient for me to let you go immediately. I can only wait for the wind to blow over. Then I will find an opportunity to let you go. Therefore, Madam must be at ease and stay here. If you try to run away and are caught by the imperial bodyguards, then it will be even more difficult for me to let you go." At first, Cheng Yaojia also suspected that the other party was deliberately deceiving her, but she had a second thought. If the other party really wanted to conspire against her, there was no need for him to go through so much trouble. Moreover, right now his tone was sincere. He did not seem like a wicked person at all. Therefore, she was even less suspicious. "Don't worry," she replied in a soft voice. "I won't run away." Song Qing-shu thought, "This woman is really like a little white rabbit. She trusts others so easily. If I really have some conspiracy, even if I sell her, she won't know." After leaving the room, Song Qing-shu politely declined the imperial bodyguard's good intention to follow him. After making 7 or 8 detours, he managed to sneak into Songgoda's courtyard. In order not to disturb the 2 imperial envoys' rest, the Dao Tai Yamen security policy was to guard the outside, but not the inside. The outside was heavily guarded, but the number of imperial bodyguards in the inner courtyard was much less. Therefore, with Song Qing-shu's qigong, as long as he was careful, it would not be difficult for him to evade the imperial bodyguards in the courtyard. The reason why he was in such a hurry to investigate was mainly because he was worried about Shuang's safety. Although Songgotu and Wei Xiaobao were sworn brothers, theoretically he should not make things difficult for Shuang. But the matter of people leaving the tea cools was not uncommon. If something unexpected really happened, it would really be too late for regrets. Cautiously, he crept toward the window of Songgoda's room. He happened to hear Songgoda's voice from inside. "Shuang, you have publicly assassinated an imperial court official under the watchful eyes of the public. I cannot let you go. Much less right now that Jin's Grand Marshal is staying in the courtyard next door. If he questions me, it will be hard for me to explain myself. Therefore, I plan to wait until evening when nobody is paying attention, and then I will secretly let you out." "I will have to trouble Songdij," Shuang replied. Songgoda sighed. "We are not outsiders. Now that Wei Xiongdi is gone, I can't just watch you get bullied." All along, he did not hear Shuang's response. After a while, Songgoda finally said, "I almost forgot, Shuang. Right now, you and Song Xiongdi." End of this chapter. Chapter 10:17. Previously in the capital, the Tong family bullied Shuang. In order to stand up for her, Song Qing-shu was willing to offend a meritorious family. Songgodu would be the first to not believe that there was nothing between the two of them. Suadage. Shuang, but was extremely embarrassed. Song Goda laughed and said, Shuang, you don't need to be shy. In any case, whether it is Wei, Xiongdi, or Song Xiongdi, we are all on the same side. Ha ha. Listening to him, Song Qingshu gave a knowing smile. This Song Goda was really good at reading people's minds. After listening for a while, knowing that Shuang was safe, he decided to quietly leave and wait until nightfall to rescue her. Returning to his room, he found that Cheng Yaojia had not left. She was sitting by the window, twisting the corner of her clothes while staring blankly out the window. Hearing the noise at the door, Cheng Yaojia was like a startled rabbit. It was not until she saw clearly that the person who came in was Song Qingshu that she let out a sigh of relief and said, You're back. Song Qingshu could not help but laugh. Your tone sounds like a little wife welcoming her husband home. The smile that had just appeared on Cheng Yaojia's lips froze. She immediately turned her back to him and said, How can you be like this? Song Qingshu knew that she was really angry, but even when she was angry, her tone was still so coquettish. It really melted his heart. We Jurchen are different from Yuhan people. Whatever we think, we will say it directly. We are not like Yuhan people who beat around the bush. Song Qingshu had been impersonating Tang Kwa for a long time. This time it could be said that he was very good at it. Even his tone of voice was not the slightest bit off. If I offend, madam, please don't take it to heart, he said. Only now did Cheng Yaojia realize that the man in front of her was a Jurchen Tatar who was famous for his fiendish appearance. Naturally, he did not know the taboo of a Han woman's boudoir. Hearing his sincere tone of voice, she felt embarrassed. She apologetically said, I am too sensitive. You are trapped in the enemy's camp. It is normal for you to be sensitive. Song Qingshu walked up to her, pulled out a chair, and sat down. When I caught you today, you look like you were sleeping. I think you haven't eaten anything yet. I've asked the kitchen to prepare a few dishes. They should be here soon. Seeing Song Qingshu sit down next to her, Cheng Yaojia subconsciously wanted to stay away from him. However, when she thought about how he had specially prepared food for her, she felt that her actions would be too hurtful. Cheng Yaojia hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she did not move her. But after hearing the other party's words, Zhang Xian subconsciously waved his hand and said, There's no need for that. I'm not hungry. Her body seemed to be opposing her. Before she could finish speaking, her stomach made a rumbling sound. Cheng Yaojia felt that she had really lost face today. Her face suddenly turned red, and she wished that there was a hole in the ground to hide in. Song Qingshu acted as if he didn't hear her. He smiled and said, Madam isn't hungry, but I am. I've been busy all day and haven't had time to eat. Madam, just treat it as accompanying me. Cheng Yaojia knew that he deliberately said this to save her face. She felt grateful in her heart and said, Okay. Soon, someone brought the prepared food over. Cheng Yaojia looked at the table full of exquisite dishes in front of her in surprise. She thought, Are these the dishes he mentioned? Seeing her dumbfounded expression, which was very cute, Song Qingshu smiled knowingly and said, Madam, you are welcome. Eat whatever you want. Just treat it as if it is your own home. Cheng Yaojia could not help but roll her eyes. She thought, How can I treat your place as my own home? However, looking at the table full of fragrant dishes, she hesitated for a moment and finally picked up her chopsticks. Song Qingshu sighed in his heart as he watched her eat slowly. This woman is really a lady among ladies. She didn't make a sound while eating, and I didn't even see her when she opened her mouth. She really is a lady from a wealthy family in the Jiangnan region. Why are you alone in the Chanji temple today? Where did your husband and the others go? In the end, Song Qingshu was not used to the quiet atmosphere of eating, so he took the opportunity to ask, What do you want to ask? Cheng Yaojia immediately put down her bowl and chopsticks and stared at him with a vigilant face. Song Qingshu was startled at first, but then he understood what she was thinking. He could not help but smile bitterly and say, I'm just worried that when they come back and don't see you, they will go crazy with anxiety. Didn't you wait until the evening to let me go? You should be able to hold on for a while. Cheng Yaojia's answer was still watertight, not revealing any information at all. Song Qing-shu said, "Madam, you are really thinking too much. If I really wanted to catch them, I would have left people in the Chanji temple to ambush them. Do you think I would do such a thing?" Chung Yaojia muttered in a low voice, "Maybe you sent someone else to do it." Song Qing-shu shook his head and said, "You have been by my side from the beginning to the end. You should know best whether I sent someone or not. What's more, you're the Song dynasty's ambassador. Currently, I am the only one who knows about this. Those officials of the Qing kingdom still think that you are the woman who was hidden by those perverted monks of the Chanji temple. If I really wanted to harm you, why would I deliberately conceal your identity?" Chung Yaojia looked up at him, her eyes shining. "You are from the Jin kingdom. Why would you help us?" Song Qing-shu smiled slightly and said, "The interests between countries are quite complicated. It is difficult to explain it to you in a short time. When the time is right, you will naturally know." "I see." Seeing that he was unwilling to say more, Chung Yaojia was too embarrassed to continue asking. Song Qing-shu continued, "Actually, the reason why I asked about your situation is mainly because I am worried that after he returns to the Chanji temple, he will find out that you were caught by us. It is not a secret that I took you back to the Daodai Yamen. If he comes here to save you, it will be troublesome. The Daodai Yamen is where the imperial envoys of the Jin and the Qing kingdom live. There are countless masters guarding inside and outside. The entire Daodai Yamen is like a dragon's pool or a tiger's den. It is not that I look down on your respected husband's ability, but if he really comes here, not only will he not be able to save you, he will also get himself into trouble." Every time Song Qing-shu said a word, Chung Yaojia's face paled. After listening to the end, she couldn't help but panic. "Then what should we do?" "We need to inform him in advance so that he doesn't make unnecessary sacrifices. Unfortunately, we don't know how to inform him." Song Qing-shu deliberately sighed. Chung Yaojia's red lips opened slightly. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly realized something. She looked at him suspiciously. You are not deliberately trying to get information from me, are you?" Song Qing-shu shrugged his shoulders. "You don't have to believe me. Just wait for your respected husband to walk into the trap. So I feel that all the authors who have mobile broadband at home should thank me. Hee hee. The problem of not being able to access the author's platform has troubled a lot of people. In the end, I called 10086 to respond. Now, when I log into the author's platform, I can instantly access it. Mobile's network is so deceptive. I don't know if the mobile company has rented the telecommunications network, but during peak hours, some infrequent websites will be pushed down. After the feedback, the mobile company will optimize the relevant websites, and you can access them. Therefore, readers who have mobile broadband at home can try to give feedback to 10,086 if they don't have access to the internet. Of course, for some websites that you understand, don't give feedback. End of this chapter. Chapter 10:18. Miss Chung bit her lip. It was obvious that she wanted to speak several times, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Seeing this, Song Qing-shu didn't force her. He put down his chopsticks and walked over to the bed, saying, "Since Madam is worried, let's forget it. Aya, I've been working hard all day. My back hurts. Madam, come give me a massage." Miss Chung was ashamed and angry. "I'm not your maid. Why should I give you a massage?" She was a married woman, so how could she do this kind of thing with another man? If this got out, her reputation would be completely ruined. Song Qing-shu smiled and said, "Of course I have my reasons. First, although I promise to let you go, don't forget that you are still my captive. If you make me unhappy and I change my mind, don't regret it. Second, if your husband is really stupid enough to come and save you and gets caught, I can help you save him." "Really?" Miss Cheng's anger suddenly turned into joy. As a man, once a word is spoken, no horse can chase it. Song Qing-shu patted his chest and promised. "It's hard to chase." Miss Chung corrected him in a sweet voice. She thought that these women were really ignorant and incompetent. Even such high-ranking officials only had this level of knowledge. Song Qing-shu noticed the contempt in her eyes, but he didn't care. Compared to the 4 or 5 horses, you should be more concerned about whether or not your husband will come to save you. Why won't he come? Miss Chung was stunned. Song Qing-shu smiled and said, husband and wife are birds in the same forest. When disaster strikes, they fly separately. This is a dragon's pool and tiger's den. If he comes, he will obviously die. Do you think he will come? Miss Cheng's face turned pale. She thought for a moment and clenched her fists. Lu Lang is not the kind of person who is afraid of death. Unless he doesn't know I'm here, he will definitely come to save me. Cheng Yaojia's voice became more and more resolute as she thought about the loving life they had lived together all these years. Since Madam is so certain, why don't we make a bet? If your husband comes to save you, even if he fails and gets caught in the end, I will release both of you. However, if your husband doesn't come to save you, Madam will. Song Qing-shu deliberately paused and looked at her meaningfully. Cheng Yaojia's heart jumped, and she hurriedly said, what are you thinking? /T. Husband, what do you think I'm thinking? Song Qing-shu laughed. If your husband doesn't come to save you, I only need Madam to massage my back for a month. After that, I will let Madam go. When Cheng Yaojia saw the playful look in the other party's eyes, she realized that she had misunderstood. Embarrassed, she blurted out, let's bet. Madam, you can come over and give me a massage first. Song Qing-shu lay comfortably on the bed and waved at her. Cheng Yaojia hesitated for a long time. In the end, she walked over and sat down on the bed. She hesitated and said, I have never massaged anyone's back before. If I hurt you, please don't take it to heart. With your soft and weak body, even if you use all your strength, you won't be able to hurt me. Song Qing-shu said with a smile. Cheng Yaojia was so angry that she snorted. She deliberately used a lot of strength. However, after a while, the kind-hearted Cheng Yaojia thought that the other party was very lenient towards her. She felt that she was biting the hand that fed her, so she gradually reduced her strength. Song Qing-shu snorted comfortably. He hugged the pillow and closed his eyes. The room suddenly fell into silence. Cheng Yaojia had never touched a man other than her husband. Now that her fingers touched Song Qing-shu's body, it didn't take long for her face to turn red. Madam, are you shy? Song Qing-shu said coldly. Cheng Yaojia didn't want to lose face in front of a foreigner. She braced herself and snorted, I'm not shy, but I clearly heard your heart beating several times faster than usual. Since you're not shy, could it be that you like me? Song Qing-shu said with a smile. Cheng Yaojia instantly stood up, her well-proportioned and full chest rising and falling rapidly. If you talk nonsense again, I won't let you massage me anymore. Song Qing-shu tugged at the corner of her clothes and made her sit down again. He said with a smile, I just don't like the quiet in the room, so I deliberately made a joke to liven up the atmosphere. Madam, please don't be angry. Continue. Cheng Yaojia helplessly sat down and put her fingers on his shoulder again. You are obviously a good person, but why do you always deliberately annoy me? Madam, don't be in such a hurry to give me a good person card. I'm not a good person. Song Qing-shu sighed faintly. He thought back to when he first came to this world. He thought that when he first came to this world, he had imagined that his hands would not be stained with blood. As a result, many people had died in his hands. Coupled with his dissolute personality, although most women were in love with each other, there were still a few who used dishonorable means to dominate each other. Was he really a good person? Seeing the sadness in his eyes, Cheng Yaojia's heart trembled. Although this man looked rough on the outside, he seemed to have a soft heart. The room fell into silence once more. After an unknown period of time, night gradually fell, and suddenly there was a commotion outside. Cheng Yaojia seemed to think of something. She hurriedly stood up, lifted the hem of her skirt, and ran to the window to look. Unfortunately, it was dark outside, and she couldn't see anything. What's going on outside? Song Qing-shu sat up on the bed and asked the guard outside the door. Reporting to the marshal, an assassin snuck in from outside and was discovered by the guards. He is now surrounded and should be captured soon, the guard replied. Cheng Yaojia panicked and hurriedly ran to Song Qing-shu's side, looking at him with pleading eyes. Song Qing-shu motioned for her to calm down and then ordered, Take some people to capture that person. Don't let him fall into the hands of the Qing people. Remember, don't take that person's life. Yes. After receiving the order, the guard outside immediately ordered people to rush to where the assassin was. Thank you. Cheng Yaojia looked at the man in front of her with a complicated expression. Previously, when she fell into the enemy's hands, she thought she was finished. She even made up her mind that if she couldn't maintain her purity, she would die. However, she didn't expect that the man in front of her would suddenly change his attitude. He changed from a wild beast to a modest gentleman. It was Madame's personal charm that won my respect. Madame, you don't need to thank me. While the two of them were talking, the guards had returned with a man in black who was tied up. Kneel. Two ferocious guards kicked the back of the man's legs, forcing him to kneel on the ground. The black cloth on his face was also torn off. Guaning, seeing the appearance of the man in black, Cheng Yaojia exclaimed and hurriedly ran over. The guards looked at each other in dismay. They didn't understand the current situation. Song Qingshu waved his hand and motioned for them to leave first. Into this chapter. Chapter 1019. Reeks. Cheng Yaojia saw that her husband was injured and panicked. She knelt down in front of Song Qing and said, "Marshal, let him go." "You promised." Seeing this, Lu Fining said angrily, "Why are you kneeling to this Jean Tatar? I, Lu Guaning, am indomitable. If you want to kill me, do as you please. You don't need to beg him." Cheng Yaojia was anxious and quickly explained, "Lu Lang, you misunderstood. The marshal is not a bad person." Then she looked at Song Qing and said, "Lu Lang was just talking nonsense in a moment of desperation. I hope the marshal will not take it to heart." Before she could finish, Song Qing interrupted her. "I know what I am doing. I will have to trouble you to rest in the room next door. I have something to say to your husband." "Marshal," Cheng Yaojia said anxiously. Song Qing smiled at her and said, "Don't worry, I won't hurt him." After getting his guarantee, Cheng Yaojia reluctantly walked out, looking back 3 times with every step she took. Seeing his wife talking to Song Qing, Lu Guaning became suspicious. After his wife closed the door, he could not help but ask, "What did you do to Cheng Yaojia?" Song Qing picked up the tea and blew on it. When he heard his wife's words, he could not help but chuckle and say, "I did a lot of things to your wife. Which one are you referring to?" He hugged Cheng Yaojia, took off her clothes, and helped her put them back on. During the whole process, it was inevitable that there would be some skin contact. Thinking about it this way, he was not lying. He had indeed done a lot of things with his wife. Lu Guaning's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when he heard this. He trembled and glared at him. "You are a despicable and shameless man. You only know how to bully her with dirty tricks. I can't see the light of day." Song Qing shook his head. "I did those things openly. Your wife didn't object to it at all." Cheng Yaojia was willing to sacrifice her innocence for the sake of the nation and let him take advantage of her. Therefore, strictly speaking, Song Qing's words were true. "You." Lu Guaning was so angry that his whole body trembled. "Bah!" Lu Guaning spat out a mouthful of phlegm and sneered. "Do you think I will tell you about this Jin kingdom?" Song Qing took a small step to the side and dodged the saliva attack. "You're so disgusting. You're already so big, yet you still spit everywhere. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Your phlegm is so thick at your age. Obviously, your body has a lot of problems. Don't make your wife a widow at such a young age." F***CK. Lu Guaning's lungs were about to explode from his poisonous tongue, but he couldn't think of a way to refute it. "Did you come into contact with Li Kaxiu during your diplomatic mission to Yangzhou?" Song Qing did not have much patience for a stinky man like Miss Cheng, so she got straight to the point. "Humph." Lu Guaning snorted coldly and turned his head away, pretending that he didn't know anything. "Have you reached a consensus with Li Kaxiu?" When Song Qing asked, he stared at Lu Guaning's face, trying to figure out something from his expression. Unfortunately, Lu Guaning still had his nose in the air, and this time he didn't even make a sound. You too." Song Qing asked a few more questions, but Lu Guaning didn't even open his mouth. He was not surprised. "Since you're not willing to cooperate, I can only use my own method. Lu Guanyin glanced at him arrogantly and finally said, use whatever torture you have. If I even frown, I'm not a hero. Torture? Song Qing's expression was strange. He smiled and said, don't worry, I won't torture you. If I leave any marks on your body, how will I explain it to your wife? Hearing him mention his wife again, Lu Guanyin said angrily, don't mention her again. Song Qing smiled slightly, and his eyes began to turn as dark as ink. He said, look at my eyes. Yes, that's it. How far has the negotiation between the Southern Song delegation and Li Kexio come? Lu Guanyin trembled, and his eyes gradually became blurred. He murmured, we're just a cover. The real envoy is someone else, and they're also the ones who have contact with Li Kexio. I don't know how far the negotiation has gone. Song Qing was shocked. It turned out that the Southern Song delegation was playing a trick. No wonder I was surprised before. The envoys sent by the Jin and the Qing dynasties were all at the level of ministers, which showed how much importance they attached to Li Kexio. Why did the Southern Song delegation only send a privy council to receive the decree? How could they show any sincerity to Li Kexio? Who is the real envoy? Song Qing asked hurriedly. Lu Guanyin shook his head. I don't know. Song Qing furrowed his brows and changed his question. Then where's the real place where the envoy is staying? Yu Qingguan. It was obvious that Lu Guanyin was struggling. Even though he was delirious, he knew that this secret could not be revealed to the public. Yu Qingguan. Song Qing stood by the window, looking at the dark night sky. The public envoy was in the temple, and the secret envoy was hidden in the Taoist temple. It was a good plan. Guards, take him away. Watch him carefully. Song Qing ordered the guards to come in and drag Lu Guanyin out. Cheng Yaojia, who was next door, was worried about her husband's safety. When she heard the noise, she quickly ran out. She grabbed Lu Guanyin's arm and shook it. Lu Guanyin, what's wrong? Unfortunately, the Jin soldiers did not listen to her orders. Without hesitation, they took Lu Guanyin and disappeared into the garden. Cheng Yaojia had no choice but to run in front of Song Qing. Marshal, what's wrong with Lu Guanyin? You promised me that you wouldn't hurt him. Before she finished speaking, she began to sob. She had a weak temperament. Previously, her mind was filled with the righteousness of the nation. It was not easy for her to summon up the courage to deal with Song Qing. But now that she saw her husband's eyes were closed and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive, she could no longer suppress the fear and panic in her heart. Tears streamed down her face. Seeing her crying like a pear blossom in the rain, Song Qing felt somewhat apologetic. He subconsciously stretched out his finger to wipe away the tears on her cheeks. When his finger touched the skin on her face, Cheng Yaojia trembled and hurriedly took several steps back. She looked at him with a horrified expression. Song Qing could not help but move. Seeing her strong reaction, he realized that he had acted rashly. The more he explained, the more awkward it would be. He simply changed the topic and said, "Don't worry, young Master Lu is fine. He just used up all his genuine qi when he broke into the mansion. In addition, he was nervous and fainted. He will be fine after a night of rest." Knowing that her husband was fine, Cheng Yaojia let out a sigh of relief. After hesitating for a moment, she tentatively asked, "When can we leave?" Chapter 10:20. Rest here for the night? Miss Cheng revealed an awkward expression. She stammered, "Didn't you say that you would let us go at night?" Song Qing smiled and said, "I did say that, but at that time you were alone. Now that your husband has openly offended the imperial envoy, I have to communicate with the Qing Kingdom's imperial envoy to do his job well. Otherwise, if I let you go in private, where would he put his face?" Miss Cheng's small mouth opened slightly. Her face was full of worry. What if the Qing Kingdom doesn't agree to let us go? It will be troublesome. At worst, I will make some concessions in private. "I believe you will give me face," Song Qing replied. "Won't this make you sacrifice a lot?" Miss Cheng asked hesitantly. She was kind-hearted and felt that she owed the other party a lot. Song Qing stared at her delicate face with a playful expression. "What? Do you want to repay me?" Miss Chung blushed and shyly lowered her head. Marshal, I am willing to be your slave in the next life to repay you for your kindness. Song Qing-shu deliberately frowned and said, Madam, you are not being kind. I helped you, but not only did you not thank me, you even cursed me. What is the meaning of this? Miss Chung panicked and hurriedly waved her hand. How did I curse you? You said you would be my slave to repay me, but I don't plow the fields. What I need a slave for? I am now the dignified supreme commander of the Jin Kingdom, but you want me to be a farmer in the next life. If this isn't a curse, then what is it? The corners of Song Qing-shu's mouth raised into a playful smile. Miss Chung suddenly burst into laughter. Now that things had come to this, how could she not understand that the other party was deliberately teasing her? She raised her head and happened to meet Song Qing-shu's eyes. She was so scared that her heart was in chaos. She hastily lowered her head and said in a soft voice, Marshal, you always like to deliberately make this kind of joke. Song Qing-shu was amused by her shy expression. He smiled and said, Even if Madam didn't curse me, there is still a problem. I don't believe in Buddhism. Afterlife and the next life are too illusory. Madam saying that you will repay me in the next life is too insincere. Then what do you want? She didn't know why, but although the man in front of her had a rough appearance and was far from being handsome, Miss Chung found that she was very happy talking to him. He was not as reserved as she usually was when she was with her husband. Moreover, when she talked to him, her heart would always beat fast. It was as if she had returned to the time when her husband proposed to her in Ox Village. Although she vaguely felt that something was wrong, she always unconsciously chatted with him. The next life is too far away. How about this life? Song Qing-shu stared at her with a smile. This life? Miss Chang's heart jumped. How could this be? She was already a married woman. How could she be entangled with another man? I already have a husband in this life. I'm afraid it's not convenient for me to promise anything to the marshal. Miss Chung bit her lip and said, Madam, do you mean that if you don't marry in the next life, you can repay me with your body? Song Qing-shu followed her words and said. Miss Chang's face instantly turned red. I didn't mean that. Then what does Madam mean? Song Qing-shu asked step by step. Miss Chung was momentarily at a loss for words. After thinking for a while, she could only say, I don't know how the marshal wants me to repay you in this life. She made up her mind that if the other party made some excessive request, she would act like an ungrateful person and would never agree to it. I think. Song Qing-shu deliberately dragged out his tone to catch Miss Chang's heart. After a long time, he continued, I haven't thought about it yet. Wait until I think about it, then I'll tell Madam. That's fine. Miss Ching secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although she faintly felt that the other party's request in the future would certainly not be easy to fulfill, it was still very good to be able to muddle through this hurdle. At worst, after rescuing Lu Lang, she and her husband would return to Jiangnan. They would never set foot in the Central Plains again and would not have to deal with him again. Song Qing-shu knew that he had teased her enough. If he continued like this, with Miss Cheng's character, it would not be good if she really fell out with him. You go to your room and rest first. I'll go to the west courtyard to find Song Go-tu and let him know what happened here. I'll go to your room to rest. Miss Ching thought that this would not do. If she stayed with him, even if the other party did not do anything to her, her reputation would be completely ruined. I want you to go to the room next door to rest. Song Qing-shu pointed to the room next to his bedroom and said, I've already ordered the servant girls in the mansion to clean it up for you. Miss Chung was immediately embarrassed. It turned out that the other party was such a gentleman. It seemed that she had gauged the heart of a gentleman with her own mean measure. Song Qing-shu suddenly laughed again and said, Of course, if Madam is willing to come to my room, I will also welcome you with open arms. Miss Ching finally could not stand his teasing anymore. With a red face, she lifted the hem of her skirt and jogged back to her room. With a bang, she closed the door and leaned her back against the door. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Looking at Miss Cheng's back as she lifted the hem of her skirt and jogged back, Song Qing-shu could not help but think of the poem that Li Yu and his sister-in-law wrote when they were having an affair. The bright moon is shrouded in a light mist. Tonight, I go to my husband's side. She walks on the incense steps in her stockings, carrying a pair of gold-threaded shoes in her hand. When we meet at the southern bank of the painting hall, we always snuggle and tremble. It is difficult for a servant to come out, but the Lord willfully takes pity on me. It's so similar. Song Qingshu smiled and turned to walk toward the west courtyard. Of course, Song Qingshu did not come to the west courtyard to discuss with Song Gotu about releasing Miss Chung and her husband. He was now the number one person in the Jin court. If he wanted to release two people, even if one of them was an assassin, why would he need to explain it to others? Of course, he came to the west courtyard to rescue Shuang-er. Originally, he planned to directly ask Song Gotu for Shuang-er. According to his speculation, Song Gotu was such a slick person that he would not choose to offend a sworn brother of the Jin kingdom for the sake of a dead sworn brother Wei Xiaobao. Most likely, Song Gotu would give Shuang-er to him as a favor at little cost. However, there was a rule in the officialdom that it was impolite not to reciprocate. The other party had given him a woman. In theory, he should return the favor by giving Cheng Yaojia to the other party. Of course, Song Qingshu was not willing to sacrifice Miss Cheng. After thinking it over, he felt that it would be too troublesome to directly ask for Shuang-er. Therefore, he simply chose a more crude method, running to the west courtyard to rescue Shuang-er. He sneaked all the way to the west courtyard and found the room he had scouted during the day. Seeing that there was no one around, Song Qingshu was like a leopard cat as he silently flipped through the window. Chapter 10:21. Song Qingshu hastily dodged to the side, evading the fatal sword strike. He saw Shuang-er's face was as cold as frost. The sharp sword in her hand was thrusting toward him. He could not help but be greatly astonished, thinking that Shuang-er's martial arts skill had reached this level. He was clearly being extremely careful. Unexpectedly, she was still alarmed. How could he know that Shuang-er had always been intelligent and had a blue heart? Her heart was as meticulous as a hare. Although she had received Song Gotu's guarantee during the day, now that they were in the enemy's camp, how could she dare to trust him completely? Therefore, she deliberately tied a silk thread on the door and window. The other end was tied to her hand, so that if someone came in, she would be the first to know. Seeing Song Qingshu evaded her determined sword strike, Shuang-er could not help but be greatly alarmed. From the opponent's movement just now, she immediately realized that the opponent's martial arts skill was far above her own. Subconsciously, she opened her mouth, wanting to alert the Imperial bodyguards outside to help. After all, right now Song Gotu was her ally. Seeing she was about to open her mouth, Song Qingshu groaned inwardly. If she alerted other people, it would not be easy for him to collect today. Right now, he was very regretful that he forgot to take off Tang Quobian's mask when he came in. Song Qingshu's figure flashed. In a flash, he appeared by Shuang-er's side. With one hand, he covered her mouth, preventing her from screaming, while with the other hand, he pressed her shoulder, pressing her against the wall on the side. Feeling the man's intense oppression, Shuang-er was greatly frightened and hastily struggled. Feeling her soft and supple body twisting and turning in his embrace, Song Qingshu's body involuntarily reacted. Shuang-er's body stiffened, and then she struggled even more violently. "Shuang-er, it's me." Seeing her panic-stricken face, Song Qingshu's heart immediately ached. Hastily, he tore off his mask and restored his original appearance. Hearing his voice, Shuang-er's entire body trembled, and she turned her head around in disbelief. When she saw Song Qingshu's appearance clearly, her eyes immediately blossomed with a pleasantly surprised light, followed by tears. Song Qingshu hastily let go of her hand and kept wiping the tears on her face. He hastily asked, "Shuang-er, did Brother Song hurt you?" I'm sorry. Shuang-er shook her head and threw herself into his arms, hugging him tightly. Choking with sobs, she said, "No, Song Dage, I'm just too happy." Song Qingshu's heart was filled with pity. He couldn't help it anymore. He held her face and kissed her. Shuang-er let out a soft moan, as if all the bones in her body had melted, Her whole body went limp in his bosom. After a long time, their lips parted. With a blushing face, Shuang gently punched Song Qingshu's chest. She said shyly, "You're so annoying, bullying me as soon as you see me." Song Qingshu cried out, "Is this bullying? If I really wanted to bully you, I would have carried you directly to the bed." Contrary to Song Qingshu's expectation, Shuang did not show the slightest bit of anger. On the contrary, she looked at him with a smile on her face and said, "Song Dage, I haven't seen you for such a long time. You really haven't changed a bit. You are still so lecherous. Since you say I am lecherous, I will show you how lecherous I am." Song Qingshu deliberately put on the appearance of a big bad wolf. His stomach rumbling with hunger, he pounced on her. "Don't!" Shuang giggled and pushed him away. She circled around the table to hide. However, Song Qingshu's qigong was superb. With just one step, he was able to embrace Shuang again. "Come, let Xianggong kiss you again." Song Qingshu kissed her face again. Being kissed by him, Shuang giggled, but she had always been a careful person. She still remembered the agreement between her and Song Gotu. While dodging, she said while gasping for breath, "Song Dage, Song Gotu will come over in a moment. I am afraid we can't stay here for long." Only then did Song Qingshu come to his senses. With an embarrassed smile, he said, "Luckily Shuang reminded me. Otherwise, if Song Gotu saw us, it would be really troublesome. Let's go quickly." Finished speaking, he hugged Shuang and walked out. Shuang hastily asked, "Where are we going now?" "You will know when we get there." Song Qingshu laughed. Carrying her, he leaped several times and returned to the eastern courtyard. "Isn't this the place where the Jin Kingdom's envoy lives?" Shuang asked curiously. "I'm the Jin Kingdom's envoy." Seeing Shuang puzzled face, Song Qingshu gently pecked her cheek. "Good Shuang I will explain it to you later." After Song Qingshu left just now, thinking that this matter was related to her husband's safety, how could Cheng Yaojia fall asleep? She had been sitting by the window waiting for Song Qingshu to come back. However, she was worried that someone would misunderstand, so she only opened a small gap in the window. From time to time, she would look in the direction of the garden entrance. After waiting for him to come back with great difficulty, Cheng Yaojia happily stood up. Just as she was about to ask about the result, she suddenly saw Song Qingshu come back with a woman in his arms. She hastily stopped and carefully looked over. Because of the angle, she couldn't see Song Qingshu's face clearly. However, she could recognize his clothes. Humph, it sounds nice, but in the end, he ran off to find another woman. Cheng Yaojia gloomily sat back on the chair and fidgeted with the silk handkerchief in her hand. She wanted to go over and ask about her husband, but the situation just now was very intimate with that woman. If she went over now, it would be very embarrassing. While she was hesitating, Song Qingshu had already carried Shuang back to his room. "Shuang, where have you been these days? Why haven't I heard from you?" Song Qingshu hugged Shuang and didn't want to let her go even for a moment. He let her sit on his lap. Being hugged by him in such a bold position, Shuang inevitably felt a bit shy. However, this was not the kind of place where everyone in the capital knew that she was Wei Xiaobao's widow. In addition, she also enjoyed the feeling of curling up in his arms. Therefore, although her little face was red, she let him do as he pleased. "It's like this. At that time, when you were kidnapped by the Divine Dragon Islands, madam." After a while, Song Qingshu finally knew her whereabouts during this period of time. As it turned out, when Song Qingshu was taken away by Su Quan, Shuang took the leopard embryo tendon-altering pill to Daunting Lake to find the poison hand king of medicine to develop an antidote. Later, when the news that Song Qingshu failed to assassinate Kangxi arrived, she was heartbroken and was about to return to the capital to find Kangxi for revenge. Unfortunately, she received the news too late. Halfway through her journey, she heard the news that Song Qingshu had become the Golden Snake King. She was pleasantly surprised, but she didn't want to go to Shandong to face his women. After thinking it over, she went south to Jiaxing to pay her respects to the people who were killed in the Zhuang family. Then she went to visit the third young mistress of the Zhuang family. After living in seclusion with the third young mistress for a while, she heard that Wu Zhirong had become the Yangzhou prefectural magistrate. She decided to come to Yangzhou to find Wu Zhirong to avenge the Zhuang family. Then she met Song Qingshu. Thousands of miles away, we meet again. The ancients did not deceive me. As Song Qingshu sighed, he hugged Shuang and said, Shuang, don't do this kind of stupid thing in the future. This time, you just happen to run into me and Song Gotu. Otherwise, you would have been in trouble. Hearing his words, Shuang-er's eyes suddenly reddened. She struggled out his arms and knelt in front of him. Brother Song, Shuang wants to ask you a favor. He was a little depressed. During this period of time, he had been updating so diligently, but he didn't have many monthly votes. Now he was only ranked 27th. Speaking of which, he was just a genuine reader of the V group. Each person had a guaranteed monthly vote. Now he should have more than 1,000 votes. Could it be that the monthly votes were low because he updated late every day? Chapter 1022. Song Qingshu was gobsmacked. He hastily helped her up and said, Shuang, quickly get up. Whatever you want to do, how can Big Brother Song refuse? Seeing the tears flowing down her cheeks unceasingly, he stretched out his finger and continuously wiped her tears. Shuang shook her head. This matter is very difficult, but I have no choice but to ask you. Song Qingshu wrapped his left arm around her waist and said, The more difficult it is, the more I will show that I dote on my good Shuang. What is it? Tell me quickly. A faint blush appeared on Shuang-er's pale face. She said in a low voice, Song Dage, that dog official Wu Zhirong is my great enemy. The Zhuang family's Laoi, Xiaoye, dozens of people's lives were all killed by him. I want to kill him to avenge the Zhuang family. But your Jin and Qing are brotherly countries. If you kill him, it is very likely that it will affect the diplomatic relations between the two countries. When the time comes, I am afraid your political enemies in the Jin imperial court will seize the opportunity to attack you. If Dage's official position is ruined, Shuang will become a great sinner. Song Qingshu burst into loud laughter. I was wondering what kind of difficult matter it was. Let alone a mere Yangzhou prefectural magistrate. Even if Shuang wanted to kill Song Gotu, kill the emperor, I will do as you wish. Shuang was pleasantly surprised. Really? Will killing him have any adverse effect on you? Song Qingshu shook his head. If we use the official procedure to kill him, it will indeed be somewhat troublesome, but deep down in our bones we are Jianghu people. Jianghu people are quick to repay kindness and enmity. Why would we need to go through such trouble? But there is one thing I must say in advance. I'm doing this difficult matter for you, Shuang. How are you going to thank me? How could Shuang not guess his intention? Immediately her face blushed. She was happy and shy at the same time. Turning her head around, she said in a low voice, Song Dage treats me so well, I'm already yours. How do you want me to thank you? I will do as you say. While saying that, she lowered her head. Seeing her soft and gentle appearance, Song Qingshu's heart was filled with tenderness. He embraced her slender waist and said, If you kill him now, your revenge will not be satisfying enough. I want you to bring him to the Zhuang clan and teach him to kneel in front of the Zhuang clan's old masters and young masters' memorial tablets. I want third young mistress and the others to kill this dog head with their own hands. What do you say? Shuang felt that this matter was indeed too good. She was afraid it might not be true. She stared at him with round eyes, not daring to believe. Song Dage, she said, aren't you deceiving me? Song Qingshu smiled and said, Why would I lie to you? Since this dog official is your enemy, he is also my enemy. Since I want to take revenge, then I should do it to my heart's content. As long as little Shuang treats me well, that's better than anything in the world. Shuang heart was filled with gratitude. Leaning on his body, she couldn't help but cry again. Good Shuang if you cry again, you will look like a little kitten. If you cry until your beautiful eyes are swollen, won't my heart ache to death? Song Qingshu cupped her cheeks and gently wiped her tears with his fingers. Shuang, Er's tears immediately turned into laughter. While wiping the tears on her cheeks with her sleeve, she said, "Song Dage, you are really like Xiao Bao." Without even thinking, you could say a long string of sweet words and honeyed phrases. The only difference is that Xiao Bao has never been educated. Therefore, his speech is a bit more vulgar. Hearing her mentioning Wei, Xiao Bao, so naturally, Song Qingshu could not help feeling a trace of jealousy in his heart. It seemed like she still could not forget that man. He wondered, in her heart, which one of them is more important. Suddenly realizing Song Qingshu was silent, Shuang Er's heart skipped a beat. "Song Dage," she hastily said, "I didn't mean to mention him. Please don't be angry." Song Qingshu inserted his hands into her waist and held her firmly in his bosom. He laughed aloud and said, "Shuang, you are thinking too much. If for now on you throw him to the back of your mind, how can you still be the little Shuang, who values affection and values righteousness?" Song Dage, being embraced so intimately in his bosom, the tip of her nose was filled with the masculine scent of a man. Shuang could not help but recall the time in Yinjing when the other party sneaked into her boudoir, the time when the two of them were intimately rubbing their ears and temples under the quilt behind the maid's back. She could not help feeling her whole body and bones go limp. Feeling the softness of the beautiful woman in his bosom, Song Qingshu's heart also fluttered. Lowering his head, he whispered in her ear, "Good Shuang Shuang was so shy that her face turned red. She buried her head in his chest and replied in a low and muffled voice, I have long been yours. You can do whatever you want. Don't ask me." Song Qingshu could not help but be very happy. He directly picked her up and walked to the bedside. As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. What's more, the two of them had not seen each other for a long time. Song Qingshu was like a ferocious tiger released from its cage, pouncing on Shuang Er's body. Shuang Er's temperament had always been unusually gentle. Today, because of Wu Zhirong's matter, her love for Song Qingshu had greatly increased. Once they were in bed, she was simply obedient, allowing Song Qingshu to enjoy the pleasures of the world with women. Cheng Yaojia hesitated for a long time in the room. In the end, her worry for her husband prevailed. She plucked up her courage and came over from the next room. She wanted to ask the result and then leave without disturbing the two people in the room. As a result, she had just arrived at the door when she heard the sound of heavenly music that made her blush. Cheng Yaojia had been married for many years. How could she not know what was happening inside? She was so embarrassed that her face immediately turned red. She spat and then ran back to her room in a panic. Even after she closed the door, her chaotic heart was still unable to calm down. "That woman is really shameless," she actually shouted so loudly. Cheng Yaojia hastily poured herself a cup of herbal tea and drank it. Only then did she calm down a little. She was extremely shy. In addition, she had been raised in a boudoir since childhood and received a traditional education. Therefore, she could not understand the other party's bold behavior. After she got married, even when she was intimate with her husband, she would grit her teeth and endure it bitterly. At most, she would let out a light hum or two. She would never dare to release her emotions to her heart's content like this. However, she had misunderstood Shuang Er. Shuang Er did not know that there was a woman living next door. If she knew, perhaps she would also grit her teeth and endure it bitterly. She would never dare to act so wantonly. As if the wall did not exist, the sound from next door became clearer. Cheng Yaojia's cheeks burned and her heart beat wildly. She hurriedly ran to the bed and covered her head with the quilt. Only then did she feel a little better. At this time, in the courtyard where Lu Guining was being held, two Jin soldiers ran over to take over. When they were taking over, they could not help but say, our marshal is really lucky with women. That woman's voice really makes one's bones go limp." Lu Guining was originally concerned about his wife's safety. When he heard this, he was shocked and hurriedly pricked up his ears to continue listening. Why do you think the marshal made such an unnecessary move? He even specially prepared a room for that woman next door. In any case, in the end, she will sleep in the marshal's room. I heard that Han women have always been shy. Perhaps the marshal did this because he was worried about her face. After all, she is a married woman and would always have some scruples in her heart. Our marshal is really as fierce as a dragon and as vigorous as a tiger. He made that woman repeatedly beg for mercy. If you go back now, you might still be able to hear it. Chapter 10:23. The Jin soldiers did not see Song Qing-shu bring Shuang back. Later, when they heard the sounds coming from his room, they subconsciously thought that the heroine was Cheng Yaojia. They were inadvertently gossiping here. They did not expect that Lu Guaning, who was pretending to be asleep, would misunderstand them. Thinking of his lovely wife lying under another man and being ravaged by him, Lu Guaning was so angry that the bones in his body creaked. Unfortunately, he was imprisoned here. Even if he was angry, he could not do anything. Dog official, I will definitely kill you. Lu Guaning secretly swore. Of course, Song Qing-shu didn't know that under a freak combination of factors, he had already become Lu Guaning's enemy, who stole his wife. However, even if he knew, he probably wouldn't care. After enjoying Shuang Er's tenderness for a night, he woke up early the next morning feeling incomparably refreshed. Shuang you rest in a room. I have something to do now. Song Qing-shu thought that he could not keep Cheng Yaojia and her husband captive. Since it was daybreak, he decided to let them go. Brother Song, let me help you wash up. Shuang was sleepy and struggled to get up. Song Qing-shu hurriedly pressed her back onto the bed and said, Good Shuang, last night you were tossed and turned by me. Don't get up. Rest well. Feeling his thoughtfulness, plus the fact that Shuang Er's body was very soft, she blushed and agreed. Song Qing-shu quickly put on his clothes and went to the room next door. He knocked on Cheng Yaojia's door and asked, Is Madam awake? Wait a moment. Cheng Yaojia's gentle voice came from inside. However, Song Qing-shu was startled. Why was her voice hoarser and more tired than usual after not seeing her for one night? Cheng Yaojia sat up from the bed and stretched lazily. She could not help but yawn. Last night, there was such a big commotion next door that she was flustered and could not fall asleep. She wanted to wait for them to calm down before going to sleep. Who knew that she would have to wait until dawn? She had only slept for 2 hours when she was woken up by Song Qing-shu. After tossing and turning all night, you woke up so early. How can you be so energetic? Are the Jin Tartars really wild beasts of the grassland, as the rumors say? Cheng Yaojia lifted the quilt and was about to get out of bed when she discovered that her dress was wet and slippery. She was so embarrassed that her cheeks turned red. She had been eavesdropping the whole night and hadn't expected that her body would have such a shameful reaction. Song Qing-shu waited outside for a while before the door was opened from the inside. He noticed that Cheng Yaojia's expression was a bit unnatural. He could not help but ask, Is Madam feeling unwell? Do you want me to call a doctor to take your pulse? No need. Cheng Yaojia hurriedly waved her hand. How could she say such a reason? Then I'll go and call your husband over now. Song Qing-shu had enjoyed all the tenderness last night and was in an exceptionally good mood, so he had no intention of making things difficult for the couple. Thank you, Darren. Miss Chung was delighted. She placed her hands on her lower abdomen and curtsied to him. Song Qing-shu smiled and ordered his men to bring Lu Guining over. Brother, you're really beaming with happiness today. At this time, Songota happened to come over to visit. Seeing his appearance, he could not help but tease him with an ambiguous expression. Song Qing-shu greeted him with a smile. I've let Brother Song go to see a joke. The union of yin and yang is the principle of heaven and earth. There's nothing to see a joke about. However, I, your brother, am not as lucky as you. The little beauty I brought back last night quietly ran away, Songota said with a regretful expression. The main reason he came here this time was because of Shuang. Songgotu had planned to release Shuang last night, but who knew that she had disappeared? He guessed that Shuang had left on her own, so he did not take it to heart. However, he still had to inform Song Qing-shu about this matter in advance. Otherwise, if the other side asked, it would be difficult to explain. After all, Shuang had assassinated an official of the imperial court in front of everyone's eyes. Song Qing-shu was slightly startled, but he could roughly guess Song Gotu's intention. Since Song Gotu was lying through his teeth, Song Qing-shu had no choice but to cooperate with him. Casually comforting him with a few words, the two of them very quickly chatted happily. Looking at the beautiful Miss Chung next to him, Song Gotu stealthily nudged Song Qing-shu with his elbow. With a cheap smile on his face, he winked and said, "How was it?" Song Qing-shu was baffled. "What do you mean, how was it?" Song Gotu's eyebrows twitched. With a mischievous laugh, he said, "Of course it was. How did you feel last night? White, smooth, and tender. I really wish I could play with it every day." Song Qing-shu could not help but sigh. His words caused the two women inside and outside the room to blush. Inside the room, when Shuang heard that Song Gotu had arrived, she hastily got up and hid behind the door. Just in time to hear Song Qing-shu's words, she felt sweet and shy in her heart. Outside the room, Miss Chung thought that Song Qing-shu was talking about her. Her face turned red from embarrassment and anger. She wanted to explain, but she was worried that she would ruin Song Qing-shu's important matter. For a moment, her heart was in a dilemma. At this time, Lu Guining was brought over by an imperial bodyguard. Just in time to hear what Song Gotu said, he almost fainted from anger. He immediately roared, "Dog official, I'm going to kill you." Unfortunately, he was firmly held down by the imperial bodyguard next to him and simply could not move an inch. "Lu Lang, don't misunderstand. It's not what you think." Miss Chung hastily ran over to explain. Suddenly, she heard Song Qing-shu's voice through secret voice sending. "Madam, if you want to save your honorable husband's life from now on, shut your mouth." Miss Chung was startled. She did not know whether she should step forward or not. Only then did Song Gotu come back to his senses. He pointed to Lu Guining and asked, "This is?" Song Qing-shu laughed and said, "He is this young lady's husband. Last night, in order to save his wife, he unexpectedly broke into the Dao Tai Yamen regardless of his own safety. He only emphasized the fact that Lu Guining saved his wife and deliberately ignored the fact that he was an envoy of the Southern Song dynasty." Chung Yaojia could not help but feel grateful in her heart. If Song Gotu knew their real identity, it would be difficult for them to deal with him. Who would have thought that at this time, Lu Guining was seething with anger? He did not care about anything else and roared, "Dog thief, you don't need to pretend. Wait until the daily Kashio." Hearing that her husband was about to reveal his identity, Miss Chung could not help but turn pale with fright. She hastily scolded, "Lu Lang." Fortunately, Song Qing-shu's reaction was fast enough. He flicked his finger from his sleeve and quietly sealed Lu Guining's mute acupoint, preventing him from continuing. Song Gotu was confused. He looked at him doubtfully and asked, "Why did he suddenly stop talking?" Song Qing-shu laughed and said, "Perhaps he found out that I played with his wife, so he was so angry that he could not speak." Chung Yaojia was angry and anxious at the same time. She was about to say something when Song Qing-shu's secret sound transmission entered her ears again. "Madam, please forgive me. I said that in order to deceive Song Gotu, so that it will be convenient for me to release you later. As for this misunderstanding, when you return, Madam will explain it clearly to your honorable husband." Miss Chung bit her lip. For her husband's safety, she finally nodded. She thought that she and Lu Lang had been on the same boat for many years. Later on, she would explain everything to him. She had to get through this difficult situation first. Last night, when Lu Guining heard the soldiers' gossip, he still had a trace of hope in his heart. Who would have thought that he would personally see his wife blushing and tacitly agreeing to this matter? Suddenly, he looked withered, and all his hopes turned to dust. Last night, he could not help but complain. He did not expect that in just one day, his monthly votes would rise by 4 places. Now, it was already the 23rd place. Everyone was really awesome. Many thanks, Shuyu 199555782, Ghost Fight 33, 8939612232, Ivan Dombear, User 255843992, Q7621679, West Chu's living treasure. He Fei's helpful friend. Passing time carefully consider. Drunk. Silver wind. Shuyu 23796946. Bidipx. Jianbing coffee. Decadent corner. Yi Wu. Another summer of sleep. 2017. Jiang Zhonghua. Shuyu 19955782. Chapter 10:24. Hearing Song Qingshu's words, Songota thought that the Jin people were indeed barbaric and vulgar. They did not even know how to pay attention to their table manners. How could they behave like this in front of someone else's husband? TSK, TSK, TSK. Although he did not agree with Wei Xiaobao's words, Songota still agreed with him. A moment later, he pointed to the husband and wife and asked, "What are you planning to do by calling them together?" Song Qingshu replied, "I see their relationship is very good, so I plan to let them go." Miss Chung smiled, thinking that this man really did not go back on his word. On the other side, Lu Guaniying's eyes were red. He simply did not care what Songota said. Songota was shocked. "You're going to let them go just like that? That's too bad." Even though he did not like women, seeing Miss Cheng's delicate and timid appearance, he could not help but feel pity for her. He could not understand why Song Qingshu would let her go. Song Qingshu smiled, but did not say anything. Songota winked at him and said, "Didn't you say that this little lady is white, tender, and smooth, that you can't wait to enjoy her every day? Why did you let her go after enjoying her for one night?" Songota was a tactful person. He had mastered the ability to say whatever he wanted to say, whatever he wanted to say, whatever he wanted to say. If he was making friends with some elegant people, naturally he would have the air of an elegant scholar. If he was making friends with a boorish scoundrel, he would also be able to quickly get along with them. In addition to his previous experience with Wei Xiaobao, Songota was now like a fish in water when dealing with people like Tang Quobian. In the last 2 days, he had figured out Tang Quobian's character. He knew that the other party was a straightforward person, a lustful person. Therefore, his style of speaking had become bold and unrestrained. Miss Cheng secretly spat out a mouthful of saliva. She thought that this man was a high-ranking official of the imperial court, yet his speech was as vulgar as a marketplace scoundrel. Unfortunately, she could not argue with him. She could only stare at him with a blushing face. Song Qingshu laughed and deliberately glanced at the couple. Although the taste of the little lady is not bad, it is inevitable that she will get tired of eating it every day. It is better to push the boat with the current and help the two of them be together. Let her husband always remember that he will always be a loser in front of me. Ha ha. Songota shuddered from head to toe. His heart was filled with endless disgust. What kind of perverted hobby is this? Fortunately, the age gap between me and him is too big, so I don't have to worry about my wife's safety. I can't let the dark cloud pearl appear in front of him later. Cheng Yaozhou was angry and anxious. But when she thought that the other party had deliberately said that to save them, she felt depressed and had no way to vent her anger. As for Lu Guaniying, if he wasn't being supported by the bodyguards, he would have fainted from anger. Xiongdi is indeed wise. Let them go. Let the little wife think of you day and night. Let that unlucky wretch keep wearing a green hat. Wise, you are indeed wise. Songota could only suppress his discomfort with great difficulty and give him a thumbs up. Song Qingshu deliberately laughed arrogantly for a while. Then he ordered the bodyguards to let the couple go. As soon as Lu Guaniying was free, he wanted to rush over to Song Qingshu to settle the score. Unfortunately, his injuries were too serious. In addition to the torment of the previous night, he didn't have any rest, so he didn't have any strength left. "Lu Lang, let's go first." Cheng Yaojia tried to help her husband, but who would have thought that Lu Guaniying would coldly push her hand away? Without even looking at her, he walked out with his head held high and chest puffed out. Lu Lang, Cheng Yaojia felt wronged and hastily chased after him. When she left the garden, she couldn't help but turn her head to look at Song Qingshu. She happened to meet his smiling, yet not smiling gaze. She was so scared that her face turned red, and she hastily trotted away. Worthy younger brother Tang Qua, it seems that the little lady is still reluctant to part with you. Songoda said with an admiring expression. Chapter 1025. Shuang had been with Song Qing-shu the whole night last night, so naturally she knew that the heroine was not Cheng Yaojia. I'm doing this to save them. Song Qing-shu then told Shuang and her husband about the identity of the Song dynasty's envoy, and also told them about the relationship between them. Brother Song, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Shuang said apologetically. It's all right. Who told you to be my dear Shuang? Song Qing-shu put his arm around her soft waist. Shuang's heart was incomparably sweet, but she still said, but I'm always worried that your words will affect their relationship. Song Qing-shu laughed and said, good Shuang, don't worry. If they really love each other, Lu Guining will not believe even a little bit of those things. If Lu Guining really suspects his wife, it proves that their relationship is not as good as it looks on the surface. Getting away from him as soon as possible is also a kind of relief for Cheng Yaojia. Shuang nodded and said, that's true. In her opinion, two people who love each other unconditionally trust each other. If it were her, she would never doubt Song Qing-shu, so she agreed with his statement. Brother Song, how did you suddenly become a high-ranking official of the Jin Kingdom? Shuang was immersed in the joy of reuniting with her lover last night and momentarily forgot to ask this question. It's a long story, Song Qing-shu said with a smile. Everything started when I tried to assassinate Kangxi. Then he told her about how he disguised himself as Kangxi, how he won the Golden Snake King, and how he went to the Jin Kingdom. Except for some details about his womanizing, he did not hide anything. He rarely told others about these things. Apart from Dongfang Muxue, Zhou Zhuo, and a few others, only Shuang knew about it. But he was not worried that something bad would happen. Just as he said before, people who truly love each other deserve to be completely trusted. Moreover, he knew Shuang's temperament very well. She would never betray his trust. Shuang opened her mouth in shock. Her cherry lips were so wide that a duck egg could almost be stuffed inside. She hastily stretched out her finger and pressed it against Song Qing-shu's lips. Big brother Song, it's all my fault for not being sensible. I actually let you reveal such a secret, so what? In any case, my good Shuang is not an outsider. Song Qing-shu held her hand and said softly, Shuang was extremely moved in her heart. She choked with sobs and said, Big brother Song, after all, I'm Little Bao's wife. I'm not as close as Sister Zhou and the others. If this kind of thing is leaked, even a little bit, it'll be a great disaster. How can you tell me casually? Why can't I tell you? Song Qing-shu hugged her. Will you tell anyone else about this? Shuang hurriedly waved her hand and said, since Big Brother Song trusts me so much, even if Shuang's body is smashed to pieces, I will definitely not tell anyone. That's it. Song Qing-shu pecked her smooth cheek. Besides, other people might not know about the relationship between you and Wei Xiongdi, but do you think I don't know? You are only Wei Xiongdi's fiancé. Moreover, all of your first time was given to me. Shuang immediately felt very bashful. She hastily buried her head in his bosom. Song Dage, you are so bad. Song Qing-shu enjoyed her tender fist to the fullest. He lowered his head and said in her ear, Good Shuang, I know you value affection and righteousness. Therefore, I don't mind if you want to observe mourning for Wei Xiongdi for 3 years as his wife. It's just that in the future, I'm afraid other people will misunderstand your relationship with Wei Xiongdi. At that time, I'm afraid you... Song Qing-shu had not finished speaking when Shuang raised her head. She stared at him with her big, watery eyes. Song Dage, she said, Shuang will not fight with other Jijia. Shuang only wants to be a maid by Dage's side in secret, and I will be perfectly satisfied. Song Qing-shu knitted his brows and said, This is too unfair to you. Shuang laughed and shook her head. Fortunately, I met Dage. Such a magnanimous man, she said. Otherwise, if it were other people, how could they agree to let me observe mourning for Xiaobao? Song Dage helped Shuang achieve both affection and loyalty, and also protected Xiaobao's reputation. In my heart, I don't have enough time to be happy. How can I feel the least bit wronged? Shuang. Song Qingshu's heart was filled with tenderness. Embracing her soft waist, he kissed her passionately. Once again, he consulted Shuang Er's opinion and found out that she was still unwilling to publicly marry him. Since it was like that, Song Qingshu did not want to force the other party. Shuang Er's whole body felt weak. Right now, she was sitting in Song Qingshu's bosom. Very quickly, she felt the change in his body. Immediately, her face looked like it was smeared with a layer of rouge. Song Dage, why are you again? Song Qingshu laughed mischievously. He moved closer to her ear and blew a breath of air. When I think about the Duchess becoming my bed-warming maid, I can't help but feel a bit excited. Song Dage, you're so bad. Shuang immediately pouted coquettishly, but her desire was also aroused by his words. However, thinking about the aching feeling between her legs, she couldn't help but frown. Song Dage, I'm afraid I can't serve you anymore. Song Qingshu couldn't help but smile. Don't make your Song Dage look like a sex fiend, okay? It's not like my brain is filled with those kinds of things. Shuang Er's face turned red. She twisted her waist unnaturally, lowered her head, and said in a low voice, but your body's reaction won't lie. Song Qingshu's old face became hot. He also felt that his persuasion wasn't enough. For a moment, he was so embarrassed that he couldn't say anything. Shuang looked hesitant, as if she had made a great decision. She moved her small mouth closer to his ear. Song Dage, I can use other methods to help you. Song Qingshu couldn't help but say, I'm afraid this is too unfair to you. Shuang bit her lip, a shy smile hanging on the corner of her mouth. You say one thing, but mean another, Song Dage. Don't you like the Duchess to serve you? Song Qingshu's heart swayed. He couldn't help but swallow. Although he didn't say anything, his body's reaction already told Shuang the answer. Song Dage, you're good everywhere, it's just... Shuang suddenly blushed and shut her mouth. Just what? Song Qingshu asked curiously. It's just that liking other people's wives, it's a little abnormal. Shuang finally plucked up the courage to say everything in one breath. Song Qingshu was suddenly greatly embarrassed. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. But Shuang doesn't mind. Shuang quickly said this in a low voice. If it wasn't for the fact that Song Qingshu's cultivation was high enough, he probably wouldn't have been able to hear it. After saying that, Shuang hurriedly lowered her head. As if to hide the shyness in her heart, she simply buried her head between Song Qingshu's legs, no longer raising her head to look at him. Song Qingshu's whole body stiffened. He tenderly stroked her hair. Later, the two of them hugged each other and told each other about the things they had encountered after they separated. Before they knew it, it was already night. Chapter 1026. You're going to kill Wu Zhirong like this? Shuang looked at Song Qingshu in shock. Of course, Song Qingshu gently wiped the trace of blood from the corner of her mouth. He offended my Shuang. How can I let him live freely and happily? Seeing the thing in his hand, Shuang's face immediately turned white. But right now Yangzhou is still under the rule of the Manchurian Qing. If we kill him like this, I'm afraid it will bring endless trouble to Song Dage. Don't worry, I have a way to deal with it, Song Qingshu said with confidence. Seeing his confident look, Shuang's eyes couldn't help but brighten. Which woman wouldn't like her lover to be high-spirited? Okay, I believe Song Dage. Holding Shuang's hand, Song Qingshu quietly walked out of the Dao Tai Yamen. Shuang looked at him with admiration. Song Dage, your martial arts skill has improved a lot. The Dao Tai Yamen security is so tight, yet you are able to enter unguarded territory with just one person. Shuang, if you want to learn, I can teach you. Song Qingshu looked at her tenderly. Shuang shook her head. And then I don't want to. In the past, I learned martial art to avenge the Zhuang family. But now Song Dage will avenge me and protect me from being bullied. Why would I want to learn martial art? In the end, a girl wielding a saber and a spear is still not elegant. That's true, Song Qing-shu raised her small hands to his eyes. Such a white and delicate pair of small hands. If calluses formed because of practicing martial arts, it would be too much of a waste of God's gift. Song Dage Schwanger hastily withdrew her hand, but her heart was filled with sweetness. Looking at her extremely bashful appearance, Song Qing-shu's heart itched, but in the end, he still had to take care of business. Good Schwanger, I just arrived in Yangzhou. I don't know where Wu Zhirong's mansion is. You should know, right? I can't wait to tear that dog thief's corpse into 10,000 pieces. Naturally, I've investigated the location of his mansion. Big brother Song, come with me. Shuang led Song Qing-shu. Just like that, the two of them flirted all the way to Wu Zhirong's mansion. Wu Zhirong was merely a prefectural magistrate of Yangzhou. Naturally, the guards in his mansion were far from being able to compare with the imperial envoy's field office. They could stop ordinary thieves, but how could they stop a true master? Soon, the two of them were standing in front of Wu Zhirong's bed. Looking at the man sleeping soundly before her, Schwanger pulled out her short sword and wanted to stab him. However, she was stopped by Song Qing-shu. Killing him with one stab would be too easy on him. Schwanger was startled. Then how shall we take revenge? Song Qing-shu smiled and said, Didn't I promise you that I will bring him back to the Zhuang family? At that time, I will hand him over to the Zhuang family's third young mistress. Schwanger nodded. That's right. Third young mistress is the most suitable person to end this hatred. The two of them were so presumptuously discussing how to deal with Wuji. Even if Wu Zhirong was sleeping like a pig, he would still wake up with a start. Who are you? Having just woken up from a deep sleep, Wu Zhirong was still a bit dazed. However, when he saw Schwanger's appearance, his drowsiness immediately disappeared. Yu, how could he not be able to control himself? Was this the female assassin who wanted to kill him before? However, what he could not understand was that this woman had clearly been captured by Lord Sa. How could she suddenly appear here? His mind only hesitated for a moment before Wu Zhirong realized that the two of them had come with ill intentions. He hurriedly opened his mouth and shouted, Come. Unfortunately, before the word come could leave his mouth, his mute acupoint was already sealed by Song Qing-shu. Who are we? Song Qing-shu laughed lightly. We are people who have come to take your life. Schwanger went forward and slapped him twice. I will let you live for a few more days, you dog thief. Then, the third young mistress will deal with you. It's rare to see Schwanger so angry. Song Qing-shu said with a smile as he tied up Wu Zhirong and stuffed him into a sack that he had prepared earlier. Schwanger's face turned slightly red. I'm not usually so fierce. It's just that this dog thief is really too hateful. Song Qing-shu laughed. Of course I know that. Our Schwanger is the most gentle and kind person in the world. Schwanger was touched. She looked at him with a burning gaze. Thank you, Brother Song. Song Qing-shu knew that she was referring to the matter of Wu Zhirong. He could not help but rub her head. It was nothing. You don't have to thank me over and over again. Schwanger shook her head. It was nothing to Brother Song, but to the entire Zhuang family, it was like giving them a new lease of life. Now that we have caught this dog thief, I want to immediately set off for Jiaxing and hand him over to the third young mistress of the Zhuang family. Song Qing-shu could not help but be shocked. So fast. At the same time, he was complaining incessantly in his heart. If he had known this would happen, he would have waited a few days to settle the score with Wu Zhirong. He had just reunited with Schwanger, and now they had to separate. Schwanger also had a look of hesitation on her face. However, after hesitating for a while, she finally said apologetically, The Zhuang family has been very kind to me. I want to let the third young mistress take revenge as soon as possible so that the dozens of wronged souls in the Zhuang family can also be freed one day earlier. Hearing her words, Song Qing-shu knew that she had made up her mind. If that's the case, I won't force you to stay. I'll send you out of the city. It's not convenient for you to bring him out of the city. Now that the city gates were closed, Schwanger knew that with her skills, she would definitely not be able to bring a living person over the city walls. However, if she waited until the next morning and Wu Zhirong's residents found out that he was missing, The city gates would definitely be searched, and it would be even more difficult to bring him out. Seeing Song Qingshu's thoughtfulness, Shuang'er immediately felt grateful. She sweetly replied, "Thank you, Song Dage." Afterwards, Song Qingshu held Shuang'er's waist with one hand and carried the gunny sack with the other. Just like that, they quietly slipped out of Yangzhou City. Afterwards, he found a vegetable farmer in a small town nearby. He spent a lot of money to buy the donkey cart that the farmer used to deliver vegetables. He threw the gunny sack with Wu Zhirong inside. "Shuang'er, I still have important matters to attend to in Yangzhou. I can't accompany you to Jiaxing," Song Qingshu said with an apologetic expression. Shuang'er hastily said, "Song Dage, because of me, you captured a high-ranking official of the Manchurian Qing. When the time comes, the Yangzhou officialdom will certainly be shaken. Perhaps it will even affect the matter that you want to handle. This has already made me very uneasy. How can I delay you?" "Song Dage, don't worry. These days I have traveled all over the country and have already gained a lot of experience. Along the way, nothing will happen. Besides, Jiaxing is not that far from Yangzhou." Only then did Song Qingshu relax. "Then after you take Wu Zhirong to the Zhuang family, quickly come back to find me. During this time, I will always miss you." Shuang'er blushed slightly. "I will come back as soon as possible," she softly said. Despite his reluctance, Song Qingshu still had no choice but to see Shuang'er off. When he could no longer see her silhouette clearly, he returned to Yangzhou City. When he passed by Wu Zhirong's mansion, Song Qingshu quietly slipped inside and threw a torch. Afterwards, he quickly returned to the Dao Tai Yamen. Yesterday, he had just learned from Lu Guining that the real Southern Song envoy was in the Jade Pure Monastery. He was worried that if he was late, the other party might have already withdrawn. Therefore, he needed Wu Zhirong's disappearance to be discovered as soon as possible. That way, he would have a reason to take the opportunity to lead his troops to search the Jade Pure Monastery. Actually, it was not impossible for him to go alone to investigate the Jade Pure Monastery. But his main purpose was to disrupt the peace negotiation between Li Keqiu and the Southern Song envoy. Therefore, he needed to make a big show of force, the bigger the better. With Yangzhou's troops involved, it would be impossible for the Southern Song envoy side to not be suspicious and suspicious. With each side harboring their own ulterior motives, it would be strange if the two sides could reach any conclusion. Not long after he returned to the Dao Tai Yamen, the news that the Yangzhou prefectural magistrate Wu Zhirong was kidnapped by the bandits came. Song Godu hastily ran to Song Qingshu to discuss the matter. After discussing it, the two of them decided to search the entire city. At first, Song Godu wanted to send troops to search the surrounding area of Yangzhou, but Song Qingshu stopped him with the reason that the city gate is closed. It is impossible for the bandits to bring people out. Song Godu thought it was reasonable, hence he dispelled the idea. In the end, Song Qingshu volunteered to help find the bandits. Song Godu did not want to refuse his request, hence he gave him several dozen soldiers. Leaving the Dao Tai Yamen, Song Qingshu found a Manchurian Qing soldier and asked him for the location of the Jade Pure Monastery. Afterwards, he led his troops to kill their way there. During the day, after Miss Chung and her husband Lu Bing left the Dao Tai Yamen, they circled around the city 7 or 8 times. After confirming that no one was following them, they ran to the Jade Pure Monastery where they had previously agreed to meet. At the Jade Pure Monastery, Lu Yu was discussing with the Southern Song envoy how to rescue the two of them. Seeing them return safely, he could not help but be overjoyed. He reprimanded Lu Guining and then softly comforted Miss Chung. Lu Guining was depressed, but it was not convenient for him to tell his elders the reason. Moreover, there was an important person like the envoy here. Could it be that he wanted to let everyone know that his wife had lost her chastity? He had no choice but to listen to his uncle's reprimand with a dark face. Then he returned to his room and fell asleep. Seeing her husband doubting her, Miss Chung felt incomparably wronged. She could only gloomily return to her room and secretly shed tears. Lu Yu saw that the husband and wife were at odds with each other, but he did not take it to heart. After settling the two of them down, he discussed with the envoy about winning over Li Keqiu. At night, The group of people went to rest, who knew that in the middle of the night, there would suddenly be a loud noise outside. The guards came back to report that the Qing soldiers had surrounded the Jade, Pure Monastery. The people of the Southern Song dynasty turned pale with fright and hurriedly gathered together. Lu Yu said to the envoy, "Sir Han, while there are not many Qing soldiers, let's take the opportunity to kill our way out and then escort you out of the city overnight." The envoy, who was called Sir Han, shook his head and said, "No need. Since there are not many soldiers, it proves that our identities have not been exposed. We will pretend to be ordinary tourists and go out to meet them for a while. Then we will send them away." Liu Yu frowned and said, "But sir, your status is noble. If you are recognized by the Qing people here." Sir Han laughed and said, "So what if they recognize me? With my status, do you think they will dare to touch me? If it was in the past, it would have been fine. But now the Qing can't even take care of themselves. How can they dare to casually provoke us? What's more, don't forget that this is Li Kaxiu's territory. If something really happens, how can he just stand by and watch?" Liu Yu was still worried and said, "But distant water cannot quench a nearby fire. Moreover, Li Kaxiu is, after all, a Qing official in name. Even if he helps us, it is inevitable that his hands and feet will be tied." Chapter 10:27. Song Qingshu swaggered into the clear Jade Monastery and watched as his soldiers caused chaos in the monastery. He couldn't help but sigh. No wonder so many people say that a man can't be powerless for even a day. This dog relies on its master's power. Bah! It really saves a lot of trouble if someone else does these trivial things for him. "May I know why Darren has come here so late at night?" A middle-aged fat Taoist led a group of Taoist priests out. His eyes swept over the scene of the Manchurian Qing soldiers kicking down doors everywhere. His eyelids couldn't help but twitch. "You are the monastery master of this clear Jade Monastery?" Song Qingshu glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. On the surface, he looked fair and fat with an amiable appearance. However, the occasional flash of light in his eyes showed that he was definitely an expert. "That's right. I am Ma Jun, the monastery master of Clear Jade Monastery." The fat Taoist bowed. "Ma Jun?" Song Qingshu frowned. This name sounded familiar. Unfortunately, he couldn't remember where he had heard it before. "It's like this. Not long ago, Yangzhou's prefectural magistrate Wu Zhirong was kidnapped from his home. I received a tip-off that someone saw a suspicious person sneaking into your Clear Jade Monastery. So I came to investigate. As the saying goes, one must have a good reason." Song Qingshu used his power to oppress others. He must have a good reason. Suspicious person? Majin hurriedly waved his hand. "Definitely not. Our Clear Jade Monastery usually sends many Taoist priests to patrol the surroundings. We definitely won't let suspicious people sneak in." Song Qingshu snorted coldly. "If you say there's no one, then there's no one. I'll come to a conclusion after I investigate clearly." Finished speaking, he lifted his foot and rushed inside. "Wait!" Majin stretched out his hand and stopped him. "I have been the monastery master in Yangzhou for more than 10 years. Forgive me for my poor eyesight. I don't know what position Darren holds. Is there an official document from the Admiral's office to search this monastery? How dare you? This is the Jin Kingdom's Minister of State, Grand Marshal Tang Quobian." This time, it was Prime Minister Suo who personally asked Tang Quobian for help. "You, a mere monastery master, dare to make excuses here." Before Song Qingshu could reply, one of the squad of soldiers assigned by Song Godu had already stepped forward and berated him on his behalf. The great marshal of the Jin Kingdom? Taoist Ma Jun was secretly shocked. He hesitated for a moment and allowed Song Qingshu to barge in with his men. Ma Jun couldn't help but groan inwardly when he saw that they were heading towards the courtyard where the honored guests of the monastery were staying, and he hastily chased after them. Arriving in front of a courtyard, Song Qingshu saw his soldiers blocking the entrance. He asked, "What's going on?" "Marshal, we've searched the other areas of the Pure Jade Monastery, except for this courtyard. However, these people are blocking the entrance and won't let us in no matter what, a Qing kingdom soldier answered. Song Qing glanced around and noticed that although the number of people guarding the courtyard's entrance was small, each one of them was incomparably valiant. Obviously, they were all martial arts masters. No wonder these Qing soldiers were at a disadvantage. Outrageous. How dare they obstruct the imperial court from handling a case? It seems like they are accomplices of the thieves. Come, bring all of them back and interrogate them strictly. Song Qing was worried that he wouldn't have an opportunity. Seeing this opportunity, instead of being angry, he was delighted and seized the opportunity to make a fuss. Humph! I'll put you in prison first and see how you can hook up with Li Keqiu. Originally, the simplest and most effective method was to kill this group of people. However, firstly, Song Qing was not a cold-blooded person. Secondly, the other party was, after all, an envoy from the Southern Song dynasty. As a Han, he felt somewhat close to them. Song Qingshu's personal guards received the order and were about to rush over when suddenly a cold shout came from inside. Wait! Very quickly, a group of people came out in a line. The leader was a lean man with a finely trimmed goatee, giving him the air of a superior. Beside him were two familiar people. They were Lu Guaning and Cheng Yaojia, who had been released a few days ago. Seeing Song Qingshu's appearance, Cheng Yaojia's small mouth opened slightly. She was obviously very surprised. Lu Guaning, on the other hand, glared fiercely at his wife. In his opinion, the Southern Song dynasty's envoy was in the open and one was in the dark. Official Han's residence here was incomparably secretive. It was impossible for outsiders to know. For this golden man to come here so quickly, his wife must have said something to him. Song Qingshu smiled at Cheng Yaojia, causing her to blush and lower her head. Seeing this, Lu Guining burned with jealousy. At this time, Song Qingshu had no time to care about the conflict between the young couple. Instead, he focused his attention on the two sides of the leader. The person on the left was dressed like a middle-aged scholar. His appearance was ordinary, but his whole person had a scholarly air. Presumably, he was the great poet of the Southern Song dynasty, Lu Yu. However, at this time, Song Qingshu's attention was more on the other person. A big man with a curly beard stood with a sword in his arms. Although he looked lazy, his whole body faintly emitted a sword aura. A top expert, and a great swordsman at that. Song Qingshu quickly made a judgment. However, what puzzled him was that he had clearly never seen this person before. Why did he feel that he was somewhat familiar? A subordinate had already whispered something in the ear of the man with a goatee. Hearing that Song Qingshu was actually the Jin Kingdom's Grand Marshal, the goatee's eyes flashed. He immediately stepped forward and cupped his hands in obeisance. He smiled and said, "Grand Marshal, this is just a misunderstanding. We are only merchants who came here to do business. We passed by Yangzhou and conveniently stopped at the Clear Jade Monastery. We absolutely have nothing to do with the thief who kidnapped the Yangzhou prefectural magistrate." Song Qingshu's expression changed slightly. The person in front of him clearly did not know martial arts, but his body faintly emitted an awe-inspiring aura. It was obviously cultivated from years of holding a high position. It seemed that the origin of this envoy was not small. "Merchants," Song Qingshu smiled noncommittally. "What is your name?" "My surname is Han, and my given name is Jiefu." The man with the goatee replied in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Although he did not use his real name, he used his real title. In any case, this was not the Southern Song dynasty. Unless they were very familiar with each other, they would not know his identity. "Han Jiefu?" Song Qingshu silently repeated it a few times and suddenly became furious. "Han Jiefu, call me brother-in-law. How dare you take advantage of me? Come, slap him." The man with the goatee's expression became sullen. Lu Yu, who was at the side, hurriedly stepped forward and scolded, "You dog official, you are ignorant and incompetent, yet you accuse a good person." The two words Jiefu are taken from the Southern Liang dynasty's Ren Fong's memorial to Lu Zheng. The subject hears that Ma Yuanfeng's sister-in-law does not wear a crown and does not enter. Fan Yu's courtesy name is Gu, and there is no constant child in the family. Therefore, the righteous man's Jefu is heard to have established himself. It has been a beautiful story for 1,000 years. This is not a messy call of brother-in-law. Because of the shame of Jinkong, Liu Yu is a firm supporter of war. Therefore, when he heard that the man was a Jin, he did not have a good expression. These words caused the people of the Southern Song dynasty to roar with laughter. Everyone had a look of ridicule on their faces. The Manchurian soldiers wanted to laugh, but did not dare to. It was extremely difficult for them to hold it in. Chapter 1028. Yes, the Qing soldiers were assigned to him. They all wanted to show their faces. When they heard his order, they all rushed over. Ding! There was a dragon's roar. The soldiers only saw a flash of cold light, followed by a sharp pain in their wrists. They could no longer hold on to their weapons, and they all fell to the ground. Only then did the curly-bearded man slowly sheath his sword. Song Qingshu's eyes lit up. With his current level of cultivation, how could he not see that the other party had already shown mercy when he attacked? Although he had stabbed the soldiers' wrists, he had not injured their tendons, so he did not stop them. 9 strategies beyond the swords. Such a magical swordsmanship would be unforgettable once seen. How could he not recognize it? It turned out that this man was Ling Hu Chong in disguise. No wonder he looked so familiar. Song Qingshu looked at the bearded man's attire and felt more and more strange. Could this guy be disguised as Wu Tianda, the general of Chuanzhou, like in the original work? Seeing that the other party was highly skilled in martial arts, Song Qingshu's personal guards immediately surrounded him and firmly protected him in the middle, confronting the Southern Song's diplomatic mission. The situation was tense, and just when a fight was about to break out, a shout suddenly came from afar, "Stop!" Looking back, he saw a group of green camp soldiers running over in an orderly manner. They spread out and stood in formation. Then a man on a tall horse galloped over. Song Qingshu's eyes narrowed. When Li Kaxiu and her father took office in the south, he had saved them. How could he not recognize this man? He thought of how Li Kaxiu had found an excuse to refuse him when he came to Yangzhou as the #1 official of the Jin Kingdom. Now that something had happened to the Southern Song diplomatic mission, he had arrived. Song Qingshu's heart sank. It seemed that the balance in Li Kaxiu's heart was clearly leaning towards him. Li Kaxiu secretly gave Goatee a reassuring look after dismounting from his horse. Then he walked to Song Qingshu and said, "Jiangzhou Waterway Commander Li Kaxiu greets Marshal." "So it's Lord Li." Song Qingshu snorted. "Lord Li is really arrogant. I have been in Yangzhou for so long, but I haven't had the chance to meet him. Why is Lord Li free today?" Now that Song Qingshu was playing the role of the most powerful man in the Jin Kingdom, he naturally had the right to show off his authority. Moreover, based on what had happened to him recently, it would be abnormal if he did not take the opportunity to vent his emotions. Li Kaxiu had been in the officialdom for many years and had long developed a skin thicker than the city walls. She replied smoothly, "A few days ago, there were some pirates near Yangzhou. It was said that they were in cahoots with the Woko pirates. I did not dare to lower my guard and hurriedly went to investigate the details. As a result, I neglected the marshal. Please forgive me." Song Qingshu grunted and said, "Since Senior Li has returned to Yangzhou City, it seems that the pirates have been wiped out?" Li Kaxiu replied calmly, "The water bandits are extremely cunning. It's very difficult to track them down. This time, I've only come back to rest and reorganize. Very soon, I'll have to return to the Green Camp to take charge of the situation." Song Qingshu secretly cursed the old fox. It seemed that he was planning to hide in the shadows until the wind blew over. Li Kaxiu took the opportunity to smile and said, "Marshal, this is all a misunderstanding. The master of the Pure Jade Monastery, Priest Ma, is my senior apprentice brother. We've known each other for many years, and I admire Priest Ma's character and martial arts. With him in charge of the Pure Jade Monastery, there won't be any thieves. Marshal, you can rest assured." Realization dawned on Song Qingshu. No wonder he thought Ma Zhan's name sounded familiar. So it was him. Because of his good relationship with Li Yuanji, Song Qingshu was also very clear about the situation in Li Kexiu's family. The teacher he mentioned should be Li Yuanji's master, Lu Feiqing, nicknamed Needle and Silk. Lu Feiqing was also a member of the Wudong sect. Since Ma Zhan was his senior apprentice brother, naturally he was also a member of the Wudong sect. Although the headquarters of the Wudong sect was on Mount Wudong, there were a few branches in the world. They were collectively known as the 5 Wudong temples. In order, they were the Purple Cloud Temple, the True Martial Temple, the White Cloud Temple, the Shangqing Temple, and the Pure Jade Monastery. Among them, the Purple Cloud Temple was naturally the headquarters of the Wudong sect. Zhang Sanfeng had previously left it to Song Yuanxiao to manage. Later, after Song Qingshu accidentally killed Mo Shingu, Song Yuanxiao took the blame and resigned. Yu Lianzhou took over. The master of the True Martial Temple was Taoist Chong Su, who was inseparable from Master Feng Zheng in the Smiling, Proud Wanderer. The master of the White Cloud Temple was Taoist Yu. It was said that he was invited by the Isle of Heroes, causing the White Cloud Temple to decline in recent years. The master of the Shangqing Temple was Taoist Tian Su. The black and white dual swords, Shiqing and Minro, also learned their skills here. The master of the Clear Jade Temple was the fat Taoist Ma Zhan. He also had 2 martial brothers. One was Li Yuanji's master, Lu Feiqing, and the other was the fiery judge, Zhang Zhaozhong. Since they were all from the Wudong sect, Song Qingshu did not want to make things difficult for them. He hesitated for a moment and said, "Since Master Li has vouched for them, I will not pursue the responsibility of the Clear Jade Temple. However, these people's behavior is suspicious. I suspect that they are spies. I'm going to bring them back for interrogation." At this time, Ma Zhan hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Master, you have misunderstood. They are genuine merchants. These years, every time they come to Yangzhou to do business, they would rest at our temple. I know them very well. They're definitely not spies." Li Kexiu also took the opportunity to say, "That's right. I also have an impression of them. In the past, when I came to the Clear Jade Temple, I also met them a few times. I even specially checked their travel permits. There is no problem. They're definitely not spies." Song Qingshu sneered inwardly. An ordinary caravan actually had the protection of a commander. It would be absurd to say that there was no problem. However, the current situation had changed. Accusing these people of being spies meant that the Clear Jade Temple and Li Kexiu were on the same side. Song Qingshu did not want to affect the people of the Wudong sect, nor did he want to publicly shed all pretense of cordiality with Li Kexiu. Fortunately, the purpose of this trip had basically been achieved. They had found the real emissary of the Southern Song dynasty. At the same time, they had confirmed which side Li Kexiu favored. Song Qingshu was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "Since Master Li has vouched for them, then this matter is over. Let's go." With that, he called his soldiers and left. "I will see you off, Master." Li Kexiu smiled and followed. Seeing the 2 groups of people leave, Lu Yu hurriedly said to the middle-aged man with a goatee, "Master Han, this place has been exposed. We need to change places as soon as possible." "No." Master Han shook his head and said, "We will stay here and not go anywhere." But Lu Yu still wanted to say something, but Master Han raised his hand and stopped him. Today, the Jin Kingdom's great marshal led his troops here and returned with nothing. There is no safer place than here in the whole of Yangzhou. If we change places, won't it prove that we have a guilty conscience and give the Jin Kingdom's great marshal an excuse to find trouble with us again? Moreover, if we keep staying here, Li Kexiu will have no choice but to come out and protect us. In that case, everyone will think that he is on our side. It will not be so easy for him to ride on the fence. Lu Yu's eyes lit up. He sincerely praised, "Master Han is really far-sighted. I admire you, I admire you." Li Kexiu escorted Song Qingshu all the way back to the temporary residence of the imperial envoy of Dao Taiyamen. She then bade farewell and said, "Marshal Darren, please rest well." Leave the case of a Yangzhou prefectural magistrate being kidnapped to this lowly official to investigate. Song Qing-shu had talked with him along the way. They had clearly talked a lot, but from beginning to end, there was no useful information. Song Qing-shu could not help but curse the old fox for being so secretive. Seeing that he was leaving, Song Qing-shu did not urge him to stay. He casually said a few words and let him go. After Li Kaxiu left, Song Qing-shu changed into his casual clothes and quietly followed him out. As expected, after Li Kaxiu left the Daotai Yamen, Li Kaxiu took many turns and finally arrived at the Clear Jade Monastery. Although Li Kaxiu had been careful enough to not be followed, how could he have discovered Song Qing-shu? You came at the right time. I wanted to hear how far your conversation went. Song Qing-shu found a secluded corner and quietly flipped into the Clear Jade Monastery. After the disturbance just now, he could clearly feel that the security of the Clear Jade Monastery had become much tighter. Even with Song Qing-shu's martial arts skills, he had to be careful not to be discovered. Following the direction of his memory, Song Qing-shu found the courtyard he had just been in. His body as light as a swallow. He flew to the roof of the room in the middle. He lifted the roof tiles to take a look. Sure enough, the two parties had met here. Behind Li Kaxiu stood Lu Feiqing and Ma Zhen. Behind the self-proclaimed Han Jiafu stood Ling Huchong and Lu Yu. Lu Feiqing, Lu Yu. A thought flashed through Song Qing-shu's mind. Presumably, this Lu Feiqing was also from the Shanin Lu clan. It seemed that the Southern Song dynasty had successfully hooked up with Li Kaxiu through Lu Feiqing's matchmaking. But who was this Han Jiafu? Judging from his appearance, he obviously held a high position. But which high-ranking official in the Southern Song dynasty had the surname Han? Song Qing-shu was puzzled. He suddenly remembered that Tish had mentioned that her husband, Han Qianye, had been sent to the Jin kingdom as a spy. He suddenly realized, so it was him. In the entire Song dynasty, the Northern Song dynasty, and the Southern Song dynasty, there were countless prominent families. But in later generations, there was no difference in the number one prominent family. That was the Jining Han family. The representative figures were the Northern Song dynasty's Han Qi and the Southern Song dynasty's Han Yuanzhou. Without exception, they had become powerful officials who were second only to one, but above tens of thousands. Calculating the time, this person naturally could not be Han Qi. It could only be the current Southern Song dynasty's political advisor, Han Yuanzhou. Now that Song Qing-shu was in the imperial court, he had deliberately studied the power structure of each country. That was why he could so quickly guess Han Yuanzhou's true identity. "Thank you, Lord Li, for your help just now," Han Yuanzhou said. "You're too kind, Minister Han. In fact, even if I hadn't come, Tang Quobian probably wouldn't have been able to hurt you. I heard that this guard beside Minister Han injured a dozen Qing soldiers with a single sword strike." Li Kaxiu looked at Ling Huchong in amazement. Even Ma Zhen and Lu Feiqing, who were behind her, were surprised. Although they boasted that they were famous swordsmen, they knew that they couldn't hurt a dozen brave soldiers with a single sword strike. Han Yuanzhou was also particularly gratified. "I met this General Wu Tianda by chance on the way. At that time, I was assassinated by a group of mysterious people. If it weren't for General Wu, I'm afraid I wouldn't have escaped death in the wilderness." Li Kaxiu was shocked. Who has the guts to assassinate Minister Han? Chapter 1029. Hearing the two words White Lotus, Song Qing-shu, who was on the roof, was shocked. The White Lotus Society was extremely daring. They actually dared to publicly assassinate a high-ranking official of the Southern Song dynasty. He did not know if Zhou Jiruo participated in this mission. It would be troublesome if she was injured by Ling Huchong. However, Song Qing-shu quickly put down his worries. Although Ling Huchong's swordsmanship was high, he was too biased towards other subjects. He had only learned the Absorbing Star's great technique, but he was still a half-finished expert. Zhou Jiruo, on the other hand, was an expert who had won first place in the lion-slaying gathering. In addition, She would occasionally dual cultivate with him for the past 2 years, so her inner force foundation had long been abnormally stable. The hidden dangers of rapid progress in martial arts had also been eliminated. She had now cultivated the 9 manual to an extremely high level. Even if she encountered an expert of the 5 uniques, she would be more than enough to protect herself, let alone Ling Huchong. However, what puzzled Song Qingshu the most was why Ling Huchong would stay by Han Xingzhou's side to protect him. Ling Huchong had always been carefree and open-minded, and he hated all kinds of restrictions. It was indeed surprising that he had become a minion of the imperial court. Unfortunately, Song Qingshu could not guess that the main reason why Ling Huchong followed Han Xingzhou was because of him. It turned out that in order to help Ren Wuxing and his daughter deal with the difficult situation at Blackwood Cliff, Ling Huchong promised Ren Wuxing to go to Fujin to investigate the whereabouts of the evil warding sword manual. He also wanted to see if there was a chance to meet his junior martial sister. Unfortunately, halfway through the journey, news of a marriage alliance between Blackwood Cliff and Golden Snake Camp spread. Ling Huchong felt as if he had been struck by a violent blow. He wanted to return to Blackwood Cliff and ask about it, but he felt sorry for himself when he thought that no matter in appearance or martial arts, he could not compare to Song Qingshu. Moreover, Song Qingshu was an overlord with tens of thousands of elite troops under his command. He controlled a territory of 1,000 miles, while he was a lone orphan. Even if he went to Blackwood Cliff, what could he change? Why would Ren Wuxing choose him as his son-in-law? Just like that, he arrived in Fujin muddle-headed and happened to run into the group from Mount Hua. Seeing Lin Pingji and Yu Lingshan showing off their affection all day long, he was even more disheartened. In order to avoid being recognized by his acquaintances, he changed his name to Wu Tianda and wandered around aimlessly, drowning his sorrows in alcohol all day long. By chance, he saved Han Xingzhou and his companions and learned that they were actually deputy prime ministers of the Southern Song dynasty. Han Chuanzhou saw that Ling Huchong's swordsmanship was breathtaking and his martial arts was strong, so he wanted to recruit him. Ling Huchong was about to reject him, but he suddenly thought of the reason why Ren Wuxing went back on his word and betrothed Ying to Song Qingshu. Wasn't it because Song Qingshu's influence was stronger than Ren Wuxing? Wouldn't a marriage alliance with him help the Sun Moon sect? If he could make a name for himself and stand out, wouldn't he be able to snatch Ying back fair and square? Han Xingzhou was a high-ranking official of the Southern Song dynasty. Wouldn't it be a shortcut to follow him? After thinking this through, Ling Huchong accepted Han Xingzhou's invitation without hesitation. Han Xingzhou didn't mistreat him. He promised him an identity as a guard of imperial equipment. Although the words guard of imperial equipment seemed ordinary, it had a great background. The guards of the Southern Song Emperor were generally composed of 4 forces: the guards of the front hall, the imperial city guards, the 3 guards, and the imperial equipment. The guards of the front hall were the bravest soldiers selected from the army, and there were about 3,000 to 4,000 of them. The various gates of the palace were guarded by the imperial city department. There were usually 5 security lines around the emperor, and they were distributed by the imperial city department and the guards in front of the palace. This allowed the imperial city department and the guards in front of the palace to restrict each other and prevent any unusual movements. The 3 guards were the meritorious guards, the imperial guards, and the imperial guards. However, compared to the guards of the front hall and the guards of the imperial city guards, they were much weaker in terms of martial strength. Because they were the sons and daughters of officials, they were mostly responsible for ceremonial tasks. However, because they were close to the emperor, the selection was very strict. For example, the imperial guards who stood on both sides of the hall during the court session were required to be the sons of imperial concubines or the observer or Hanlon scholars. Compared to these 3 forces, the guards of the imperial armament were the most mysterious. They could be considered the real imperial bodyguards with sabers. There were not many people with this kind of official position. Most of the time, there were only 3 or 4 of them. In the nearly 300 years of the Song dynasty, there were no more than 6 of them at most. With such a small number of people, the selection criteria were naturally very strict. Usually, They were the emperor's most trusted and extremely brave men. In the legend of the Condor heroes, Huang Yaoshi's disciple, Chu Lingfeng, was expelled from the Peach Blossom Island. In order to please Huang Yaoshi and return to the sect, he risked his life to steal a painting from the imperial palace and wanted to present it to his master. In the end, he died together with the palace masters in the Ox village. The military officer had a waist token that read, Zhongzhou Defense Envoy, Kung Fu Doctor, Imperial Equipment Shi Yanming. The Song Dynasty's official system was very complicated. The Zhongzhou Defense Envoy and Kung Fu Doctor were just titles. The most important thing was the imperial equipment. In the original work, when Huang Yaoshi learned of this, he sighed. If Chu Lingfeng hadn't had his legs broken, he wouldn't have died in the hands of Shi Yanming. In fact, the truth was the opposite. Shi Yanming was an imperial equipment and was extremely skilled in martial arts. Chu Lingfeng was no match for him. If he hadn't seen that Chu Lingfeng's legs were disabled, he wouldn't have fallen into the trap set by Shi Yanming on the Peach Blossom Island and ended up dying together with him. Han Xingzhou gave Ling Hu Cheng the imperial equipment as soon as he arrived. For a Jianghu person like Ling Hu Cheng, such a reward could be regarded as a meteoric rise. After all, the imperial equipment usually stayed by the emperor's side. It was easy to win the emperor's favor, and from then on, his career would soar. Originally, an important position like the imperial equipment wasn't something a minister could decide. However, Han Xingzhou's family was powerful, and a certain favored concubine in the harem was on the same side as him. Thus, it wasn't difficult to arrange an imperial equipment. Song Qingshu didn't know that Ling Hu Cheng had such a fortuitous encounter. He only focused on what the two sides were talking about. Han Xingzhou clearly didn't want to continue discussing the White Lotus Society with Li Kashio. He said, Lordly, it's been so many days. Have you considered the matter we talked about last time? Li Kashio smiled bitterly and said, Prime Minister Han, you know that my entire family is still being held hostage in Yanjing City. If I follow your request and openly change my allegiance to the Song Empire, won't I be asking for their lives? You don't have to worry about this. We will naturally arrange for people to rescue Lord Li's family, Han Xingzhou answered. Li Kashio frowned. It's not that I don't believe Minister Han, but in the current situation, the ownership of the Jianghuai generation has already attracted the attention of all parties. I'm also in the eye of the storm. The imperial court will definitely be very strict with my family. How can it be so easy to rescue them? Li Kashio wasn't an idiot. He had already sent people to the capital several times in an attempt to rescue his family. Unfortunately, the imperial court was very strict with his family, so the people he sent couldn't do anything. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.